Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of r/Entitled People Stories. Today we have a very special episode for you, a compilation of some of the best entitled people stories we've read over the past year. So sit back, relax, and enjoy a few hours of the most entitled people you've ever heard of. And by the way, Karen assured me that for every thumbs up this video gets, she won't try to get anyone fired for an entire week. So please smash that like button and subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. My spoiled daughter keeps taking the car without permission, so I put a tracker on it. I have a daughter who is 15 years old and recently got her instruction/learner's permit after she took a summer driver's ed course and passed the written exam. In my state, the learner's permit has a driving restriction that requires the driver to have a licensed adult who's 21 or older in the front passenger seat with them at all times. No exceptions. She has to hold the learner's permit for at least 1 year before she can move up to a restricted license at 16 years old. We bought her a car during the summer so that she can have a familiar car to practice in with us while having her learner's permit. This will be the same car she will use once she gets her license. The problem is that she's been driving this car by herself without our permission or even informing us. Sometimes we leave our daughter home alone for a few hours so that we can go to the store or on a date, etc. And she's been secretly driving when we're not home. She has her own key and we have the spare. I found out after noticing the discrepancy in the miles in her car. We scolded her and told her that it was illegal for her to drive on her own, and we started outlining the tires with chalk so that we would know if she used the car or not. However, the chalk does not automatically stop her from taking the car out. It only lets us know afterwards if she did. So she still kept using the car and would shrug us off afterwards. I don't want her breaking the law, and I'm terrified of her driving on her own with so little experience, although she seems to be doing fine as the car has no damage. So I secretly installed a GPS tracking device in the car. We then secretly pretended to leave and waited until we noticed that the car's location changed. I immediately called my daughter and yelled at her, telling her that she needed to come home now. She came back and we got into a huge fight, screaming, and it ended up in tears. She screamed that I was a controlling mother and was invading her privacy, and that this was her car since we bought it for her, so we had no right to secretly install the tracker without her permission. I talked to someone else about it, and they did say I took the wrong approach, and that it was wrong of me to install the tracker, and that I should have done something else. I would have taken the key back, but she refuses to give it to me, and I don't know where she keeps it. Am I the jerk for secretly installing a GPS tracker in my daughter's car? Edit. I do plan to remove the tracker once she gets her license. It's only while she has her learner's permit. Edit 2. Update. We drove the car to a local Walmart because I saw they're pretty friendly with truckers and van dwellers, so I figured that they wouldn't mind a car left overnight. We don't have anyone who lives nearby that we can keep the car at. I called an auto locksmith, and they said that the earliest they can come out is tomorrow afternoon, so we're waiting on that. There's a lot of people who ask the same questions, and I can't respond to everyone, so I'm just going to answer them here. Why did you buy her a car in the first place? I wanted her to be able to practice driving for her license in a car that would be familiar even after she got her license. That way, she would feel more confident since she knows the car, where everything is, etc. Driving is scary, so I wanted it to be a really smooth transition from her learners to her license. This is also why we didn't think to sell the car either, since we wanted to keep it for this reason. I told my husband about selling the car, and he said he would think about it. He was the one who paid for it. Why did you give her a key in the first place? My parents bought me a car when I was 14 and had my learner's permit also. They immediately gave me a key to it, and I never once drove the car without their permission despite always having the key. I thought my daughter would do the same thing. I've raised her almost exactly how my parents raised me, so I thought she'd act the same way as I did in the same situation. Why haven't you taken the key? I've told her to give it back to me, but she refuses, and even when I searched her room, I was unable to find it. Why haven't you done anything to punish her? I already told her she was grounded a long time ago, and she does not get to use a smartphone. She still has a flip phone. I don't want to completely take away a phone, because I still want her to be able to contact me in case of emergency, but has unrestricted access to her laptop because her homework is posted and submitted online. Why haven't you disabled the car? To be honest, both me and my husband don't know much about cars, so this didn't even occur to us to try. I'd never even heard of a steering wheel club before. We're the type of people who bring our car into the shop for any maintenance, so I didn't know how to disable the car, so the idea of removing parts of the car and such never occurred to us. Why did you think the chalk and tracker would work? Honestly, just because it would have worked on me when I was a teen. I didn't like upsetting my parents, so I never did things like this, and small minor punishments really quickly put me in my place growing up whenever I did misbehave. I thought the tracker was more serious than the chalk because it meant that I would find out she took the car almost immediately before she got too far. Take the keys from her. It's really as simple as that. But a GPS does not prevent your daughter's bad and dangerous behavior. Why does she still have unrestricted access to the keys? So, I guess you're the jerk for not preventing your 15-year-old from endangering innocent motorists. Honestly, I would sell the car. Your daughter is a spoiled brat. You might have to knock a couple hundred off the sale price since you only have one key. You're the jerk. Take the darn keys already. Good grief. Tracking her does nothing to prevent her from getting into an accident. You bought her a car, but I'm guessing it's in your name and you're the one paying on the insurance. Be a parent, not a sneak. Take the keys to your office or someplace outside your home and lock them up. A no-car diet should start immediately for her. Well, what would you do in this situation? How would you try to get the keys from your daughter? Please let us know. Just another example of why I'm so glad we don't have kids, Reddit boy. Am I the jerk for literally showing my dad how he behaves every day when he gets home from work? I'm 16, female. My father, who's 46, is the breadwinner, while my mom is a stay-at-home mom. She handles everything around the house like cooking, mopping, washing, laundry, etc. I'm the oldest and I try to help, but really there's only so much I can do while my dad just gets home at the end of the day and literally complains about everything, like how the carpet isn't clean or how the food is cold. As a result, I'd have to listen to a huge argument daily between him and mom. It's exhausting, but honestly, I think that my dad is in the wrong here. I tried talking to him to get him to see how his behavior is, but to no avail. So what I did was pick a day off for him and pretended to act like him. I put together an outfit that looked like a suit and put black tape over my lips to look like a mustache. At 6 p.m., I went inside the house, shouted, "I'm home!" then sat next to him in the living room and started kicking my shoes off while complaining about the state of the house at the top of my lungs. He glanced at me, confused, asking what I was doing. I ignored him, then started yelling about the carpet being dirty, shower not ready, the kids needing to be quiet, and so on. He kept staring while mom and my siblings laughed. My younger brother kept pointing towards me, saying, "This is daddy." I then proceeded to yell about dinner, then went off on my mom for not preparing it before time. My dad stopped me and in a serious tone asked what I was doing. I turned to him and said, "What? Can't a man rest after working long hours?" in the most macho voice I could muster. My dad got the hint because this was the common phrase he uses daily. He went quiet and avoided looking at me. I stopped the act and told him I was just trying to show him what he's like every day when he comes home from work. He said nothing, just went outside and refused to speak to me. Later, he went on about how I mocked and invalidated him, that he does work hard, and me doing this was disrespectful and invalidating. Mom said it was funny, but also thought I hurt my dad's feelings, and I could have gotten the message across some other way instead. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. You held up a mirror to his behavior and he didn't like what he saw. That's on him. I hope he gets the message. Not the jerk, first off, but I think you have a good chance here. Listen, please. You can acknowledge, "Hey Dad, I know that probably did hurt your feelings and I'm sorry. Of course you work hard and provide for us and we appreciate it. But I want you to see that your behavior hurts Mom's feelings. It hurts the family." The fact he went quiet instead of exploding in anger, to me says there's hope. Like many dudes his age, he struggles to process those emotions, but he recognized he was feeling more embarrassed and hurt than angry, it seems. The key is to understand and withhold judgment, to recenter the convo on not just his pain, but everyone's feeling pain and moving forward. That's tough, and you're a kid. It's not your responsibility to do it. You would be morally justified to say buzz off, but I always ask, do you want to win or be right? Being right often feels hollow. I hope you win. I just want to hop onto this excellent comment to add that I would also recommend you having a private chat with your mom. Explain to her that me acting like dad wasn't just about pointing out his bad behavior towards you. I also wanted to point out how your marriage affects the whole family. The daily fights and dad's yelling affects everyone. We all feel it when it gets to the time dad is due home and we prepare to listen to our dad to be mean to our mom. It affects all of us knowing our dad doesn't respect our mom. Every day we all watch your hard work. We've started trying to help you out because we know our dad doesn't appreciate or respect the hard work you do. It's so bad that younger brother recognized I was pretending to be dad so quickly, yet dad didn't know what I was doing until the last minute. But what affects me the most is knowing that despite all this, you always put dad's feelings first, before your own and before everyone else's. Even now, you're more concerned with how what I did hurt dad's feelings than you're concerned by how dad's behavior affects the rest of the family. Brother strongly associates that behavior with dad, while dad apparently has no idea he behaves like this, and your priority is me apologizing to dad, not changing this dynamic between you and dad, or asking dad to apologize to us for making our atmosphere at home so awful every time he comes home from work. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or dad? Please let us know. Company did over long-term employees, and my boss' act of revenge helped me start a company for pennies on the dollar. For legal reasons, I can't disclose the exact location, purely because the team I worked with were cool guys and our boss did over corporate really hard without them noticing. This took place in 2012. Part 1. The Fire Marshal. I worked at a smaller chain electronics store that sold top-of-the-line video cameras, PCs, cell phones, photo cameras, and this new thing called 4K televisions. For context, we were located at an expensive outlet mall. We were literally the only electronics store in the mall and the only place for 50 miles that sold high-end electronics. Logic dictates that this in itself would make our location prime real estate and we would have record sales every year. Spoiler alert, that's exactly what happened, and we basically did well 5 years in a row. Furthermore, I got hired because I came into the store looking for some video equipment. The store manager was caught off guard by my advanced technical knowledge of camera technology because I kept asking him specific technical questions on certain models. Note, this piece of information is relevant for the end of the story. So with that preamble out of the way, let's get into the heart of the story. While working the camera counter, the mall fire marshal came in and asked to see the store manager. Since I had no customers at that moment, I decided to take him to the back to meet my manager. This verbatim is what I can remember. Me: "Hey, the fire marshal's here." Manager: "Why?" Me: "Don't know. Want me to let him in your office?" Manager: "Sure, give me a moment." Marshal: "Okay, mall management wanted me to ask when you want me to bring in the construction foreman." Me: "What, are we building something?" Looking at my rather baffled boss. Manager: "No, I didn't ask for a construction foreman." Marshal: "Well, aren't you aware of the new, overpriced clothing store that's going to be built here?" At that exact moment, I and the store manager looked at each other, then looked at the fire marshal, who handed my manager the work order on the brand new, overpriced clothing store that was going to be built at our exact location, thus permanently ending the only high-end electronics store for miles around. Part 2. Money Talks. A few days later, the manager held a store meeting with me and the rest of the team. Prior to this meeting, the manager gave me permission to tell the rest of our 12-person team about the incident with the fire marshal. So the manager confronted corporate about what was going on, and after some skillful verbatim gymnastics, we got the whole story. Manager: "So I called corporate to ask what's happening, and I'll tell you straight. Overpriced clothing store has been trying for 10 years to get a spot at this outlet mall. They went to every store with a buyout offer for the storefront. The CEO of this electronic chain was approached by overpriced clothing store with a massive check in the millions to break our lease and hand over the storefront to them. We weren't supposed to know any of this. Corporate wanted us to be in the dark right up until the last day 2 weeks from today." Yep, everyone was upset. In fact, we were so angry that all of us did the absolute bare minimum. This included the manager. In 1 week, we tanked our own sales by 70%. Corporate freaked out and sent a hatchet man to talk to the store. This doofus was confused why we weren't giving it 110% and was surprised we got visibly angry when he informed us that we wouldn't be getting severance pay or a letter of recommendation. My manager very politely told him to leave and that he would take care of the situation himself. Part 3. Oops, my finger slipped. After the hatchet man was banished from our store, the manager took a close look at the management handbook and noticed a little snafu that was written in the book in regards to discretionary discounts. Mainly that the store manager has permission to discount any product in the store up to 90% off, and the offset of the cost will be absorbed at the end of the year discretionary cost analysis. Yes, you read that last sentence correctly, and the wonderful part of this story is that the store was being shut down by the end of February. So another store meeting was held. The manager told us that 2 days before our last day, we were having a secret 90% off sale just for the employees and their family. When I heard this, I asked the question everyone was thinking. Me. So let me get this straight. This includes every single item in this store? Manager. Yup. In fact, what you guys can do is pick out everything you want now and set up a little pile in the back room. Make sure you guys label everything, and I'll include the premium service warranties for free. Well, I decided to do some shopping. Newfangled 240Hz 4K TV, 4K camera system, 3 5-hour spare batteries, SD cards, microphones, laptops, drives, tripods, all kinds of stuff. But wait, there's more. The manager told me I could have any of the HDMI and mini DisplayPort cables that are currently attached to the showroom TV and computer displays. On the day of the secret 90% off sale, we all showed up 2 hours early from the back entrance and bought our items. With tax, I paid about $1,153 for about $13,000 worth of brand new electronics, and in essence, gave me the necessary tools to start my own media business. As one final forget you to corporate, the manager gave all of us a phone number to a caseworker at the local unemployment office who was very sympathetic to our case. Part 4. I've never seen this man before in my life. Well, flash forward to March 2013, and I'm carefully navigating my freelance media company into a nice stream of steady work. I get an unknown phone call from a law firm representing the electronics company. Apparently, $400,000 worth of electronics were mistakenly sold at a 90% discount, and they wanted to know if I had any information on where I could find my manager. The following conversation is what I can recall to the best of my memory. Me. May I ask why you need to know this information? Law firm. Well, we believe that he woefully misused his discount privileges. Me. Okay, but could you answer a question for me first? Law firm. Sure. Me. Why did your client, the CEO of an electronic chain, take a multi-million-dollar check to break a lease on his own business and not properly inform the store staff of its impending closure? Dead silence. Me. Hello? Law firm. Sorry to bother you, sir. And that was it. The moral of the story, don't do over your employees. P.S. Boss, if you're reading this, take comfort in the fact that none of us have sold you out, and I hope you're living a wondrous life. Am I the jerk for refusing to take my daughter to my ex-husband's wedding? I'm 42, female. My ex-husband, who's 45, and I were together for 20 years. We had a beautiful daughter together, Jocelyn, who's 14. We got a divorce 5 years ago due to infidelity on his part. I was devastated. He was the love of my life, and he betrayed all of the trust and loyalty we had built up. To make matters worse, he ended up in a relationship with the woman he cheated on me with. They got engaged 1 year later and are set to be married in 2 weeks. Honestly, I still am heartbroken over my divorce. It's hurtful to me that we were together for 20 years and he could just go fall in love with someone else, as if I was nothing. However, Jocelyn was only 9 when we divorced, and he's a great father, so I would never want to come between their bond. Jocelyn loves his fiancée, as she's very sweet to her, but she doesn't know the reason why her dad and I divorced. I want to tell her when she's a bit older, and he doesn't want to tell her at all. Anyways, I compromised with him that Jocelyn could come to the wedding, but that he would have to provide the transportation to and from the wedding, as I want no part of it. I don't want to drop my daughter off at his wedding. I don't want to see all the decorations and the happy guests. It would just be too much for me. I didn't tell him all of that, obviously, but he agreed. Today he calls me and asks if he can ask for a huge favor. It turns out that his future in-laws are flying in the morning of the wedding and he has to go pick them up. Therefore, he can't pick up my daughter the day of and wanted to ask if I could take her. I said absolutely not and asked why he can't pick her up the day before when she gets off of school. He said he doesn't want to make the drive twice and then he will likely not have time as he has to prepare for the rehearsal dinner. I asked why can't the bride pick up her parents, and he said she'll be getting her hair done and won't be able to. I laughed and told him there was no way I'd take my daughter and that he'd have to figure it out. Boy, why did I say that? My daughter ran downstairs crying. Her face was red 10 minutes after my conversation with her dad, calling me terrible and accusing me of not wanting her to spend time with her dad. I told her that's not the case, and she demanded to know why I couldn't take her. I couldn't give her an answer, and she ran upstairs crying. Now I'm getting messages from his family calling me heartless and cold and a jerk for trying to ruin his special day over a relationship that is long over. My family understands my point of view, but I feel terrible that I've upset my daughter. I don't know what to do. Am I the jerk? Should I just put aside my feelings and take her? Not the jerk, but I also think your daughter is old enough to know the truth about her father. Otherwise, you will be the bad guy going forward. Not the jerk. The people he needs to pick up can get a taxi. His first responsibility should be his daughter, if he actually wants her there. And I think it might be time to tell your daughter a bit more about what happened. She's a teenager now and needs to be learning lessons about loyalty and managing relationships responsibly. Her getting the impression that this situation is all right and that you're wrong for not being happy that the ex-husband who cheated on you is getting remarried is not a good place for her to start when it comes to learning how to expect good treatment from future partners. If he thinks picking up his future in-laws is more important than picking up his own daughter, then he's very, very wrong. The adult in-laws can manage a variety of transportation options. A young teenager can't. He's showing his priorities, and it isn't his daughter, and you need to be prepared to help protect her and guide her as he continues into the future, wanting to play happy family and have his daughter go along with it while he puts her in second place to his new family. Not the jerk, but 14 is old enough to understand cheating. I would tell darling daughter that while I love her, and I love that she has a good relationship with her dad and her future stepmom, I can't handle seeing their wedding when they started dating while dad and I were still married. Then I would ask her if she has any idea as to how she can be at the wedding without me having to see it. Sometimes teenagers are incredible out-of-the-box thinkers. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or is her ex-husband? Please let us know. He's showing where his priorities lie, bruh. You should be putting your daughter first, my dude. Dumb employee is dumb. I worked at an office supply store for a while in my late 20s while finishing college. I worked mostly with younger college students and began training other employees and running the front end of the store. Our amazing manager took a better position elsewhere, and we were gifted a manager who was absolutely horrible. Let's call her Jean. She treated us so poorly that we went from over 20 employees to just 7 in the first couple of months of her taking reign. Jean was absolutely horrible, but I stood up for myself and the few remaining employees and openly expressed my disdain for her while remaining completely professional on paper. And here comes annual evaluations. Jean gives me an absolutely horrible review. Since our raises were performance-based, I did not get a raise. I refused to sign and contested my evaluation, which really upset her. Since we only had 7 employees left, we were desperately hiring. Within a week or two, she had hired a few people and scheduled me to train them, so I did what any rational human about to quit their crappy job for a career would do. I formally asked HR for retraining due to my perceived incompetence and made it clear that I was no longer comfortable training new hires. I simultaneously began refusing to do any work outside of my minimal assigned responsibilities and began moving really slowly. I made myself as incompetent as possible, refusing to answer customer questions via phone and forwarding all calls to her, paging her for help for stupid things, intentionally messing up the cash register, and requesting policies for irrelevant operations. I stopped meeting quotas, and when coached, I would play dumb and pretend like I was trying my hardest. Most importantly, I started correcting customers and contractors who called her Jean and insisted her name was Jan. When she questioned me, I said, "I'm sorry, I can't pronounce your name well, Jan." It infuriated her. Of course, Jean was also upset she had to train the new employees herself. I filed a formal complaint with HR about my lack of retraining every week until they fired me. I had another job lined up, but I filed an unemployment claim anyway just to leave some extra work for her. Petty bonus. I never told her that my mom was the store's biggest buyer at the time and had been in the top 3 forever. Guess who took her business to Office Max? My very non-confrontational mother actually went into the store to request her account be closed, knowing that contract accounts have to be closed by the store manager. Why are you closing your account? I'm Bree's mom. She got canned about a year later, and I'd like to think I was the little match that lit the fire. Am I the jerk for refusing to share my business profit with my husband? I, female 32, have a leg disability that got worse to the point I could no longer work. So I stayed home with the kids for 4 years. I had plenty of free time after the kids became more independent, and I found myself sitting around all day long. I have a sewing hobby that I learned while living with my grandmother since I was 13. So I started spending my time sewing. My husband made a laughingstock out of me, calling me grandma or granny, and running with the jokes and teasing. It was unbearable, but I ignored him. Anyway, a friend of mine saw some of my work and suggested that I open a website and sell what I make. I was hesitant about it, and my husband's opinion was, meh, who would want to buy grandma's junk? But I asked my friend to help me, and people really liked my work. They started buying them off of me, which was shockingly amazing, y'all. I started really investing into this, and in 1 month, I was able to make over $200 to $300. It's been 3 months now into the business. When money started coming, my husband would ask me to buy something or make a restaurant reservation or even fix his car for him. When I refuse, he'd say that I have money from my sewing business and should really pay. I decline every single time he asks. Yesterday, he showed me a wristwatch online that he really liked and asked me if I could pay for it. I said no because I have no money. He pointed out once again the money I have for my sewing business, but I told him that the money was literally none of his business. He blew up, saying that I was being selfish and mean, and said that the business profits should be split equally between both of us. I use caps because he yelled those words, not just me. I told him he not only mocked me for sewing, he even doubted my potential. Besides that, I do all the work, so why would he expect profit? He said that he, as my husband, gets half and I should really consider it or stop the sewing thing altogether. I laughed, thinking he was messing around, but he left the house, then came back looking upset. His friend called to scold me, reminding me that my husband already does enough for me to be able to find time to sew, and so he deserves a percentage, but I still refused. Now his family are pressuring me to share the money, but I'm still refusing. Am I the jerk? Everyone sucks here. Your husband sucks for belittling you and discouraging you, but I assume your husband works and has been bringing in an income that he used to pay for food and shelter. You got a share in that, didn't you? Your husband may not deserve a percentage, but you're supposed to be in this marriage together. It doesn't sound like you are. If that's the case, end it with him so you can both find someone more suitable. Info. Depends very much on who's paying what bills. For instance, if you're saying, my money is mine, but your money is ours, then you are very much the jerk. If his income pays the bills and you get to keep yours to yourself, that's an issue. If you get a disability check that is used for your share of the bills and this is just extra, different story. Everyone sucks here. At the core of it, you were a stay-at-home mom and now you're working again. You should be contributing equitably to the household. Your husband is definitely worse though for how he has handled basically every aspect of the situation, from relentless teasing of your hobby to a lack of support for your business to not addressing the financial situation directly, and then involving friends and family into the conflict. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know. Am I the jerk for calling my husband an awful father because he wanted to leave the house to his biological daughter only? My husband and I have been married for 13 years. He has a daughter, Alyssa, who's 16 from a previous relationship, and I have my daughter, Mariah, who's 15 from a previous relationship too. My husband is the only father my daughter has ever known, and until now, he has made no distinction about our kids. Alyssa's mother is still very involved in her life, and she spends half the month with us, while my daughter lives with us full-time. My father-in-law recently passed and left him their house, a very nice house. We're actually so excited about this because we were saving to buy a home for us four, and now that we're making plans to move, I told my husband we could use that money to make some renovations for when the kids inherited it, so they can sell it and split the money. He said no, that the house will be his daughter's and that he doesn't feel comfortable leaving it to Mariah too when she's not his legal kid, and that we could set the money aside for her because the house doesn't need that much work anyway, which is true, but it felt like a low blow. I said it was unfair to leave Alyssa a full house and remarked how he was willing to leave it to both when we were going to buy one, and he said that that was because we would have bought it together, so it was only fair. I said he was being an awful father and asked if he was willing to leave one of his kids homeless, but he said I was overreacting. I pointed out how Alyssa was getting this house with some of the money her grandparents already left her, plus my husband's inheritance and her mother's, while Mariah only had us both. My father-in-law didn't leave her anything, which is okay. He admitted it wasn't fair, but that's just how it is, and that we would work to try to make it as even as possible. I was flabbergasted, so I just took Mariah and came to stay with my sister. He called asking to talk, but I'm not ready. My sister said I was the jerk because Mariah is not entitled to my husband's childhood home, and it made me think. Am I the jerk? You're the jerk. Your daughter is not entitled to his childhood home, and your husband was definitely making concessions to make it more fair for her by offering to save up money for her. It is really narcissistic and actually selfish of you to expect your husband to leave his stepdaughter, your daughter, his childhood home from his father, when usually stuff like that goes down the bloodline. I could see being upset if he was trying to exclude her from anything, but he's not. You need to reevaluate your attitude and your way of thinking before you lose a good man. You're the jerk. He's keeping the house in the family. Sorry, but your daughter is not his daughter. It's not like he's kicking her to the curb. Presumably, y'all are going to give that money and more to your daughter, like he said. Ouch. At what point does a stepkid become a real kid, though? Are we exiled to the island of misfit toys to be treated as less than indefinitely? Family doesn't stick to blood ties only. I asked my stepdad to walk me down the aisle. He was in the delivery room for my firstborn, and I named one of my kids after him too. I'm closer to him than my biological dad, and he's the one I hang out with on Father's Day. I'd be upset if he only viewed me as my mother's kid only. This is a tough situation with nuance, and the solution is not so black and white. On paper, yeah, the house is his, so he can leave it to the local trash pandas if he wants. It makes sense to leave it to the kid with biological ties to his father. But the reality is his stepdaughter will definitely feel some type of way at the difference. He's been her dad since she was 2. That's going to sting for sure. I don't blame OP for being hurt on her behalf and on her daughter's as well. Not the jerk is my vote. He has the right to do what he wants, and OP has a right to her feelings. Edit to add. I doubt OP and her husband will give Mariah the equivalent cash value of the home, especially if they live in a high cost of living area, so there will be a marked difference between the two. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know. My Karen sister refuses to help around the house, so I kicked her out. I'm female, and my sister Gina, who's 23, was left homeless after my parents cut off all financial support at the end of college. They warned her, and she didn't believe them. She was living at a friend's house until she found a job, but she decided that she would go after a master's degree that doesn't start until February. I live in the city that the master's degree is in. She asked me if I could help her for a few months until she started her master's degree. She couldn't help financially with the house or anything, but she said she would help as soon as possible. I don't have such a stable condition to support another person besides my son, who's 6, but I proposed that I would pay the bills alone as long as, 1, she took care of my son from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m., not on Sunday, and Saturday from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m., and 2, she cleaned the house every 3 days. Nothing too deep, just a sweep and dishwashing every day. That would save me money on babysitting and the cleaning lady who comes to my home twice a week. She didn't seem very satisfied, but that was my condition. I wouldn't support her totally like her friends do because I don't have the financial resources, and I'm only doing it because it's cheaper than hiring other people. My son likes to stay on his own, doing his own things that he likes. He just needs someone to keep an eye out for him and to make him lunch. After 2 weeks of her living here, me paying all of the bills and food, even the car which she uses a few times a week, she sat down and talked to me. Said that she accepted because of my condition, but that she was child-free for a reason, and that was precisely not having to take care of kids or to deal with them constantly. We argued about it, but I asked her to continue caring for him at least this week to give me time to hire someone else. That was on Wednesday. She agreed, and when it was Thursday, she called me saying she couldn't do it and for me to try to find someone else. I was irritated, and even more so when I saw a pile of yesterday's dirty dishes when I arrived. I told her that my condition to support her until December was for her to take care of my nephew and clean the house. She refuses to do either now, so I'm no longer interested in her staying at my home and me having more expenses, so it was better for her to move. She started saying that she would eventually pay for everything when possible and that I was using her by asking her to work without being paid properly. We argued, but I made my decision and I gave her 15 days to move. She's calling me the jerk. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. I think your arrangement was fair to both sides. If she can't hold up her part, then you're not under any obligation to hold up yours. Not the jerk. I wouldn't have even given her 15 days, OP. That was nice of you. She wants to use you, but doesn't want to help in any way. Your conditions were fair, but that wasn't good enough for her, so she needs to go. Not the jerk. Is there a reason she can't work and earn money? People in graduate school, heck, even undergrad, usually work. You told her your reasonable conditions and she agreed. If she's backing out now, it's reasonable for you to give her notice to find her own place and a job. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or their sister? Please let us know. Her sister sounds almost as useless as you are, Reddit boy. Am I the jerk for not letting my husband pull $14,000 out of my account without signing a contract? I, female 36, have been married to my husband, who's 42, for 2 years. I've never been married before him, but he was married twice and has 6 kids. He requested our finances to be split. Fine by me, because seeing how he blows through his money is so frustrating. He says he has kids, commitments, and has to provide, but I don't think that kids would need that much money to live like the other kids. His bank account is almost always empty, whilst mine has over $20,000 in it. We take turns paying for daily expenses and stuff. Lately, he's been struggling with money. He borrowed from a number of people, including my own brother, about $4,000 from him just a week ago. He just seemed desperate for money. I asked what the deal was, and he said that he needed the money for the kids, which seemed fishy since kids don't really need that much money for their expenses. The eldest is 16. He came and asked to borrow $14,000 from me, pull it from my account and into his. I tried asking him what he needed the money for, but he said it was none of my business, then insisted that he'll return it ASAP. I said okay, but under the condition that he sign a contract stating he'll return the money in full. He acted all shocked and offended, then went on about how I don't trust him and his word. I told him that's all I got and this was my one and only condition. He kept ranting about how I'm refusing to help and making the situation more difficult for him instead of cooperating. I insisted on a contract to be signed before he even pulls a penny, and this morning when I told him this one more time, he blew up and said that we're family and that I should be ashamed for involving courts and lawyers between family. He left the house and was so upset he hasn't responded to any of my calls yet. Am I the jerk for standing my ground with this condition? Update. So we talked after he got home, and when I tried pressing him to tell me what he needs the money for, he gave me the same attitude and said, I don't have to worry about it. I still stood by the condition I made, and he called me useless, then stormed off to spend the night with or at God knows who. Not the jerk. Is he a gambler? He insisted that he'll return it ASAP. Sounds like he's counting on that big win. OP is not the jerk for sure. I hope she had a prenup. Husband needs help. If you could return that much money ASAP, you wouldn't need it in the first place. You would be open and honest about your time frame for repaying it. This is absolutely a gambling debt. I've been around this. The last person I had to cut from my life was this person, a friend who gambled constantly, always needed to borrow money, contingent he'd be able to pay back double as soon as possible. That doesn't make sense. It doesn't here either. 2 years sounds about right for the maximum amount of time one is able to hide something like this from another person that's close to them. OP has $20,000 in the bank and is willing to give her financially irresponsible husband $14,000 if he agrees to sign a piece of paper? Whether he signs a contract or not, there's no way she's getting that money back. I'm a lawyer. In most small claims court, you can only sue for $5,000 or maybe $10,000, and even that takes time and effort just to get the judgment. Then you have to go back to court to try and collect on the damages by garnishing wages, etc. If hubby has nothing left, then there's nothing she can go after. OP, do not loan your husband any money. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know. Wow, no wonder the guy's got 2 ex-wives. We'll probably have a 3rd one soon as well. I told my friend that she will never be a part of my family-in-law, no matter how much she wants to be. I, 29 female, went to university and made a friend who we'll call Laura, who's 29. Laura was from a small town and didn't have many friends, so she latched onto me pretty tightly. I do really like her, but she saw me as a best friend, and I only saw her as a close friend. Having moved back to our respective cities, we don't see much of each other anymore. I got married about 6 weeks ago. ETA, been with my now husband for 15 years, and I invited Laura. Laura ended up hooking up with my husband's brother, Liam, who's 24. I admit, I raised my eyebrows at this, but we're all adults, and I thought that was that. Nope. Last week, Laura called me and said that she had news. She told me that she was pregnant and that it can only be Liam's baby. She asked for Liam's phone number so that she could tell him. I offered to be there for her in any way that I could, but I genuinely did not think she would keep it. Less than an hour later, my husband called me. He was at work and I hadn't yet told him the news, stating that Liam had called him distraught and stressed and scared. He said Liam told him Laura said she was keeping the baby and that she was willing to move to our city so that he could be closer to their kid. For the past week, she's been calling me saying that she's excited for Liam to get to know her better, that she's so happy I'm going to be an auntie to her baby, and asking me to help her look for flats near my home. I couldn't listen to her excitement whilst watching Liam's despair grow, and eventually I just stopped answering the phone. Well, 2 nights ago, she turned up at my home unannounced with an overnight bag in hand. I asked why she was here, and she said that we're family now, and that family helps family. Here's where I may be the jerk. I snapped and told her we weren't family and that we would never be family, that her trying to force her way into the Cooper family by having a baby is not the same as marrying into it. I told her to get whatever fantasy she had conjured of Liam falling in love with her out of her head and to accept that he does not want this baby as it will ruin his life. She didn't say a word to me. She just turned and walked away from my front door. I've tried calling her since, but she's not answering the phone. Earlier today, got a call from a mutual friend telling me that Laura has said she's not going to be having it after all, as she doesn't want to be tied to such toxic people. Apparently, she texted Liam the same thing, and now my in-laws are mad that I convinced her to do this to their first grandkid, and my sister-in-law said I'm just jealous that I wasn't having the first Cooper baby, which isn't true at all. So Reddit, am I the jerk for getting involved in the situation? ETA, answers to common questions. 1. A paternity test was mentioned and Laura did agree to it, but only once the baby was born. 2. Liam is not planning on running away from his responsibility if she keeps the baby. He's a theater actor who is away for months at a time and doesn't earn a lot of money. A baby would seriously impact his career, but he said he would not abandon his kid even if it meant giving up his dream. He's clearly stated to Laura that he did not want to be a father and did not intend to start a relationship, but for whatever reason, she chose to ignore that. 3. Laura and I weren't really close or best friends anymore before all of this. We were close at uni, but naturally drifted apart when we moved to different cities. We see each other maybe twice a year at weddings and events, and she has come to stay with me once or twice in the past 8 years. 4. She sent a picture of a pregnancy test when she said she was pregnant, but so far there is no other proof. Everyone keeps asking if I'm certain she's pregnant, and truthfully, I don't know. But I wouldn't have thought her to lie about this kind of a thing. 5. In regards to my Cooper comments, she was joking about changing her name to match her baby's surname and getting family portraits done. I thought I was trying to get her to understand that it might take people some time to come around to the situation and that Liam did not want a relationship, but it came out harsher than I intended, and I accept that was horrible of me to say. 6. People are assuming I think negatively of Laura in other aspects of her life, or have accused me of thinking her too trashy or frumpy to be part of the Cooper family. Laura is smart, stunning, and stylish. She has a great job and works hard. She isn't some shut-in with no life. Final edit. Although the judgment is not the jerk, I do regret how I spoke to a person who I was meant to be a friend to. I was out of line with my comments, and I fully intend to apologize to her, though I do not expect her to forgive me. I think it's best for me to distance myself from the situation until emotions have calmed down. Not the jerk. I personally think that having a baby by a stranger, especially one that does not want the kid, is very unlikely to go well. Laura needed a reality check, but maybe it would have been better for you to encourage Liam to stand up for himself and to be firm with her rather than wallowing in self-pity. OP. Thank you, and I do understand your point. Liam is the baby of his siblings, and sometimes comes across as younger than he is. He seems to have retreated into himself and hasn't been able to really tell Laura how much this is going to affect him in a way that would make her see that she's putting him in a very difficult situation. Whenever he's tried to speak to her, apparently she would talk over him. Laura isn't putting him in a difficult situation. He knew what was at stake when he hooked up with her, and the very least he could have done was grow up and have a conversation with Laura if he wanted to be a deadbeat father, instead of letting his sister-in-law do his dirty work. The silver lining is that she's right. She'd be better off without you in her life. The fact that after she was apparently head over heels about this baby and then immediately jumped to not having it says to me that there was never a baby to begin with, and she has some strange obsession with OP and is using this invented situation to force herself into her life. I'm divided, but I would go with not the jerk. I don't think she's mentally well. She hooked up with him, got pregnant, and thinks that the whole family is also hers now, and she could do what she wants? That's uncomfortable crazy, and I think she did it on purpose to get pregnant. Did she even have proof of it? It could be a lie. And then she stood unannounced in front of your door, demanding you to take her in? Did she talk with Liam about what she wanted, or did she decide all of this stuff by herself? She's delusional and thought that a baby trap would give her the family she wants. She needs therapy, and you need to go no contact with her because of her craziness. Everyone sucks here. Liam is a big boy. He messed up, and although his anxiety is understandable, it's his problem to deal with. You don't need to defend him. You were cruel to Laura, although her showing up at your front door was overstepping, and I'll get to that in a minute. What you said was rude. At no point did you have an adult conversation about things. Wow, Laura, I'm happy you're so excited, but things are moving really fast here, etc. From her standpoint, you just snapped at her out of the blue and told her that having an entire baby does not give her the same legitimacy of being a Cooper than you marrying into it. By the way, super crappy thing to say. Laura is acting a little strange, I'll give you that. Your wedding was 6 weeks ago. That's extremely early for a pregnancy to be announced to everyone like that. I'm honestly shocked she even knows she's pregnant. It's really odd to be set on having a baby with a man who obviously does not want to raise said baby with you, ignore his distress, but suddenly want to not have it when said man's sister-in-law gets mad at you. Also, showing up on your doorstep with an overnight bag without asking was a huge overstep and not cool. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or Laura? Please let us know. If this story had been told by Laura from her perspective, just imagine how different all the comments would be. Don't you just love the people on Reddit? Am I the jerk for telling my sister that she overreacted when she screamed at me for entering her and her husband's room? So I, female 23, am a full-time college student. Right now I'm living with my sister, Claire, and her husband, Thomas, while I get through my current semester. I don't work, so I don't have everything I need for my daily skin and hair routine, so I borrow stuff from Claire. Claire didn't have an issue in the beginning, but then started complaining about me randomly walking into her room, but I go in there looking for the stuff that I asked for. She gave me a hard time just because I walked in on Thomas getting dressed to get the eyeshadow I borrowed from her. And then that other time when I walked in late at night. She told me I needed to get her permission to enter the room before I take anything, but I figured this would make things complicated. It's already difficult enough that I have to ask to borrow an item. So last night around 10 p.m., I went upstairs and into her room to grab the hairdryer. I walked in and whoops, I saw them doing the do. I had no idea that's what they were doing in there, especially since Claire told me that Thomas had been feeling sick the past 2 days. She lashed out at me, yelling that I get out. I quickly grabbed the hairdryer, then walked out and shut the door. Had to have that hairdryer, didn't you? Minutes later, she came downstairs in her robe and went off on me, saying she was done with me, repeatedly disrespecting and violating her and her husband's privacy. I told her it was cool, no big deal, and that I needed the hairdryer, but I didn't have time to ask for permission. She got even louder, saying I had no business barging into her marital space and embarrassing her and her husband like this. I told her that I was sorry, but she really is overreacting to the whole thing. This made her even more upset. She went on about how I'm living here rent-free and yet not being respectable enough. I stopped arguing and went to my room. This morning, Thomas left the house early and Claire ignored me at breakfast, still upset, saying that I don't get to say whether she overreacted or not and that my behavior was inappropriate. She even wants me to apologize to her husband for making last night awkward. You're the jerk. I'm honestly baffled that you're even asking. She specifically requested that you not go into her room without asking, and you ignored that because you didn't feel like asking? How do you not see how wrong you are? Not the jerk. People really do overreact about you have to knock first. If you're talking to your kid, okay, but you don't talk that way to a grown adult. We aren't students in school who need permission to go to the bathroom, and these idiots should have had their door locked, so that's on them. I have a sister who also was a total drama queen with this kind of stuff. Long story short, after years of her overreacting to things I did, I finally gave her something to overreact about, which resulted in her divorcing her husband. Then he tried to get with me, but I wasn't interested. Told him our fling was just a way I could get back at my sister for everything she had put me through. I don't know if Thomas is hot or not, but you might want to consider this, as I guarantee your sister would be getting a taste of her own medicine. One thing I found in my 26 years of life is there's no better way to get revenge on a bad woman than to hook up with her hubby. I know that makes me sound like a total jerk, but after everything I've been through, I think I deserve to be a jerk sometimes. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her sister? Please let us know. I will never understand how some people can be so darn rude. And I'm a Karen myself, so what does that tell you? I took my father's retirement pension and gave it to my mother. My father is a jerk. Growing up with him was less than fun, and I can assure you, based on witnessing it, he was not a good husband. I'd go on about what a jerk my father is, but instead I'll quote a judge. You're the most despicable human I've ever had in my courtroom, and that's coming from a family court judge. I read this winning endorsement of my dad's personality in the court documents I acquired relative to his divorce with my mom. The same place I discovered the activity he had engaged in to steal from my mom. It's also where I found the information I needed to get one over on him so severely he's going to disinherit me. A frame of reference about my father is that he's a pathological narcissist and behaves exactly how those people are compelled to act. They aren't generous people, and punching them in the wallet is the best way to get them. About 10 months ago, when our tale begins, I was going through some stuff. Stuff being a whole lot of PTSD related to both my dad's treatment and my job as a paramedic. He did a ton that affected me deeply, things that I needed to move past, along with all the other stress from 15 years of EMS. I'm trying to move past and trying to work through everything. I quit drinking, started getting therapy, and I was thinking having my dad involved might help me in our relationship. Well, I seriously misjudged that one, so you'll probably be unsurprised to hear that conversation went swimmingly. I'll spare you the details, but when I broached the subject with him, our back and forth degenerated into him screaming at me that I'm a failed paramedic, liar, and an alcoholic. While I have certain pride about my job, I have more pride in my 14-month sobriety, so hearing this from my old man might have caused me to behave a bit psychotically. I got right ticked off at him and decided to dig up every bit of dirt I could, see what kind of man he actually is and has been. When it was convenient, I hopped in the mystery machine before taking a trip to the courthouse. Everything is public record, so I bulk bought copies before retiring to my easy chair to read, plot, and pet my white long-haired cat. For good measure, I obtained a file of divorce document from my mother. Soon enough, I hit upon a line of inquiry worth following up on. It seems that during the final settlement of my parents' divorce, in 2002, my mother was awarded 1/3 of my father's employment pension. She was a stay-at-home mother and could not earn one herself, so it was given to her by a judge. Mighty strange, because my father, as he brags, took a nearly full pension and retired a bit early. No way that jerk was living the last 10 years after retiring early on 2/3 of a pension. He isn't constantly complaining about it. So I asked my mother if she was collecting a pension from his job or had cashed out the value, $100,000 plus at the time, 20 years ago. No to both questions. Well, that's interesting. I wonder if that's collectible on, and what 20 years of compound interest from a pension fund makes it worth. Well, I did eventually find out, along with the fact that my dear old dad had been collecting my mother's portion for 10 years, in open violation of a legal order from a judge. Why didn't my mother pursue this sooner? A combination of being unable to afford a lawyer, being his victim for 20 years, and pessimism after so much of his continued dodging obligation to the order, she just quit. There's effectively no statute of limitations he could hide behind because of the wording of the settlement. As far as I could tell, I had him dead to rights, and my mother would be collecting. It would be a slam dunk. I just needed to hire a lawyer to help me. So I set out to find the most unbalanced psycho who passed the bar exam. As it says in the good book, do unto others as they would do unto you. So that's what I set out to do. My lawyer suggested we send a demand letter to the pension office to try and remedy it before filing what would undoubtedly be an easy win for him. I agreed in spirit and instead phoned up the pension office and got put through to the woman managing my father's file. Well, she was a delight, and it was a trivial matter for me to get her to loathe my dad. We talked for 45 minutes, and all our conversations about life, families, and relationships, we got down to some things of note. Since I could show her correspondence her office had sent to my father, CC'd my mom on, some years ago, and ongoing for 5 consecutive years trying to resolve this matter, which he had ignored, she was more than willing to start the process on remedy immediately. Full cooperation from this lady in her office was a matter of merely providing documentation, and with my lawyer on retainer, this office was beyond asking my father to comply. They complied for him. About 2 months since I last spoke to my father, and he now had no idea his pension was about to take a serious hit. My mother's portion was already made whole and adjusted to reflect that her portion was brought to maturity, so his early retirement doesn't affect her fund. He loses 10 years of valuation to her. He also retired 3 years early, which knocks him down now to 17 years of pension valuation, not 27. If you'd forgotten, my dad had been collecting my mom's money and was overpaid by $30,000 per year for the last 10 years. Like I said, mom was made whole, so the pension company is going to claw back that overpayment from his current pension fund. As much as I did this for spite and malicious glee, I did do it to give my mom a chance at a proper retirement. My mother started collecting her pension about 3 months after I contacted the pension office, and to celebrate, she bought tickets to New Zealand for the family for Christmas, so we can see our relatives. I was able to get most of my retainer from the lawyer back, and to celebrate, I went online to order a glitter bomb. I was able to ship it to my old man anonymously from another country. God bless the USA. I heard from my sister he opened it up in his car. He'll never get rid of it. Am I the jerk for leaving after I found out my sister-in-law was lying about her food allergy? I, female 18, turned 18 in early August. For my 18th birthday, I wanted to go out and celebrate with my family by going to my favorite Chinese restaurant. I'm quite a picky eater. I'm autistic and have issues with textures, but any type of Asian food is safe food for me. When it comes to more Western cuisine, I don't have a lot of options unless I make it at home. Everything was organized and ready to go, but a week prior to my birthday, my brother's fiancée, Vicky, who's 27, said that she can't go. She said she has a seafood allergy, and after contacting the restaurant, they said that they can't realistically cater to her and politely advised that she doesn't eat there. Vicky and my brother suggested that we go to this Italian restaurant instead. Everyone was on board, but I don't like Italian food. The textures of cheese, pasta, and all of it is just gross to me. I got upset because it was supposed to be a dinner for my birthday, and it was like I was forgotten about. I talked to my parents, and they told me to stop complaining. Vicky can't help having an allergy. So I sucked it up and went. I spent my birthday miserable and ended up just sneaking in my own snacks into the restaurant. Well, last weekend I spontaneously went over to my brother's house with no warning because I had forgotten my hoodie there from a few days prior. My brother let me inside, and I saw Vicky sit on the couch scoffing tuna like it's nobody's business. Me: I thought you were allergic to seafood. Vicky: what are you talking about? Me: my 18th birthday last month. You said we couldn't go to the Chinese restaurant because you're allergic to seafood. Vicky: well, I'm not medically allergic. I just can't stand the smell of all those shrimps and prawns. It makes me feel nauseous. Me: so you ruined my 18th birthday because you don't like how seafood smells? Wow. I stormed out and blocked Vicky and my brother on everything. I couldn't believe this. I talked to my parents. They think I'm being dramatic and that it's just a restaurant, and told me to apologize to Vicky for speaking to her like that in her home. I was so angry, I went to stay with my boyfriend's family for a few days, who very kindly let me stay. My family thinks I went super overboard and are calling me a brat and entitled. I don't know how to feel. Was I the jerk? Not the jerk. I would usually agree with your parents and say that we should do what we can to make people with food allergies feel welcome. That means switching restaurants if someone can't eat at a particular restaurant. But this situation is different. First of all, as you said, it was your birthday. The right thing to do was for Vicky not to attend or to arrange with the restaurant to be allowed to bring her own food. She's not your blood relative, so she didn't have to be there. It's not okay that your parents let your brother and his girlfriend pick a restaurant you didn't like. You should ask them to take you out again to a restaurant of your choosing. Yes, you are angry about this, and I don't blame you. No one listened to you. Your parents let Vicky ruin your birthday. Now people are still dismissing and minimizing what you're saying. That would annoy anyone. I tried to save her $71, but Karen wanted a $100 Visa gift card. I was a department manager at an arts and crafts store a few years ago. A warm, pre-lockdown Saturday morning in May of 2018. I get called up by cashier who is known to be very soft-spoken. All the cashiers are busy. Holding up register 3 is a middle-aged lady with 2 carts chock full of crafts and baking stuff. The issue was the customer's 10% off coupon was expired by over a week and it was not working. Her total was around $557. The lady was already irate, berating the cashier, an 18-year-old, saying she can't believe coupons expired so soon after getting them in the paper, huffing about how she was a rewards member who shops here often since she was a Girl Scouts leader, and how I should contact the newspaper she got the coupons from and make them either deliver it to her sooner or let corporate know the coupons should last for up to a month. I de-escalated the situation and apologized while explaining that I couldn't make corporate stop running different sales every week, but I would certainly manually take off the 10% myself. As I was doing this, I noticed she would save money with the paid membership we had recently implemented. With this membership, the customer would get a one-time 20% off their current order and 5% off every purchase thereafter. Yes, it was a ripoff, considering it offered almost exactly the same exact rewards that the free program offered. But seeing this lady had a huge order, I pointed out that not only would she get the membership essentially free, but it would save her $71, $20 more than she would have saved with her expired coupon. The lady jumps down my throat. First, the cashier tries to tell me about this dumb membership, and now you? Do I look stupid? I don't want it. I don't want it. I don't want it. I'm not a moron. I know there's a catch. Get me another manager. You're not going to trick me into paying for something more. Do I look stupid? You're insulting my intelligence. I'm tired of seeing your face. Get someone else up here now. By then, I had already taken the 10% off, called another manager, even apologized, despite fuming, and she was still ranting. My fellow manager on duty came up. I stayed because I wanted the sweet glory of seeing this lady's face when she was told the exact same thing I had just told her. This sent the lady into another frenzy. We got the district manager on the line, who had literally left minutes before the interaction started, from a meeting where he commended me on being the best salesperson of this membership in the district, and he had to explain to her the same policy, that every employee was required by the company to offer this membership, and we were not trying to rip her off, but we apologized for the inconvenience. She still did not leave. Eventually, I asked her what she wanted, what it is that she wanted out of this interaction that by now had caused a whole scene and had taken up over half an hour. She demanded a $100 gift card, not to the store, but a $100 Visa gift card for wasting her time. How about no? We couldn't do that, of course. She ended up leaving with the promise that the district manager and general manager of the store would call her later. I ended up taking a 40-minute paid break in my car to release steam after that. When the district manager called her the week later to offer her a $10 certificate to the store, she told him to hold on a second, and we could all hear her in another store throwing the same kind of fit. Ridiculous. Karen demands I rate her looks on a 0 through 10 scale, so I gave her a 0. I'm 19, female, and my 18-year-old brother is apparently a very beautiful person. He gets complimented 24/7 by all kinds of people and everyone adores him. He's modeled and all that jazz as well. You'd think our mom would be happy or proud of him, but no, she's jealous. I don't know why, considering he gets his looks from her, but she sees him as competition. Like, I'm sure she loves him, but she acts like a bitter kid sometimes. She comments about how she's skinnier and prettier and got more attention back in the day and more. It's insane. She literally copies his every move while also criticizing him at the same time. My brother doesn't really care and pretends that she's joking around, but he's starting to really fixate on how he looks, so it's definitely bothering him. My final straw was when my mom dragged him and herself over to me and made me rate them both out of 10. I tried ignoring her and brushing her aside, but she wouldn't let me leave and kept asking me to rate them. I had it and was like, "Goodness, Mom, you're a 0, and you've been a 0 since the second you started acting so crazy." She went quiet and began to cry, and then said that I'm a horrible excuse for a daughter. She wants me to apologize and hasn't left her bedroom since. I feel guilty because my mom is a really hard-headed person and she never cries. My dad, who thinks all this is ridiculous and fights with her because of her behavior, even thinks that I was too harsh. I'm just exhausted. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. I hope you and your brother can set some boundaries with her. OP. I hope my brother can too. He's starting to see her as competition as well, unfortunately. Not the jerk. Her behavior is ridiculous and possibly harmful to your brother. And you had a point. No matter how outwardly pretty she is, acting like this makes her a 0. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or their mom? Please let us know. Maybe get your mom some ice cream that she can binge on while she cries and watches Golden Girls. I actually like that show, so don't at me. Am I the jerk for shutting off my fiance's computer while he was playing his video games in my son's room at 1:30 in the morning? When we moved back to my family's house about a year ago, my fiance set up his gaming PC station in my elementary school-age son's room since we have such a limited amount of space. He's not my son's biological father. My fiance and I have a baby and who sleeps in our room, so there's literally no space at all in our bedroom. I agreed to let him have his computer and desk in my son's room as it was the only room out of the two with just enough space. My fiance has always claimed that gaming stops him from going out to bars or spending extra money we don't have. Since moving back, I stressed to him that I don't want him to play late at night because I don't want him to disrupt my son's sleep and affect his circadian rhythm. Over the past year, my fiance hasn't respected my request as he's continued to play video games till pretty late at night, sometimes up to 4 a.m. on weekends. Whenever I bring it up to my fiance, my son always insists that he doesn't mind that my fiance is playing games in his room. My son probably enjoys the company, but he also makes a pillow wall around his face to block the bright lights every night. It bothers me since I know my son could be getting a better night's sleep without a mouse and keyboard clicking away with constant bright flashing lights from the computer monitor. About a month ago, I caught my fiance vaping in my son's room while playing video games while my son was asleep. I lost my marbles at my fiance and told him how he doesn't give a crap about my son's health or sleep. He claimed he doesn't believe in circadian rhythm. I made a very big deal out of this and gave him an ultimatum that he needed to stop gaming late at night and to never vape in my son's room again, or we're done. He promised to stop and has been pretty consistent by stopping at 10 p.m. and not vaping that I'm aware of. Well, last night I heard mumbling from my son's room, which woke me up around 1:30 a.m. and it brought rage to me. I demanded that my fiance get off his game, and he said he was almost done, just 20 more minutes until the match was over. I told him to get out of my son's room or I would be turning off the computer. I ended up pushing the power button to turn it off. Am I the jerk for turning off my fiance's computer during his match? I know my son claims he doesn't care that my fiance plays in his room. As his mom, I want my son to get a good night's rest. Additionally, my fiance never wakes up early to help me out with our kid and sleeps until 10:30 a.m. or later every single weekend. Edit. Fiance saw this post. He is actively packing his stuff and leaving. Not the jerk on that occasion, but you are the jerk for ever allowing him in your son's room to play video games all night and disturb your son. Plus the vaping? What? He's not even his dad. I'd ditch the guy pronto. Your kid deserves better. Not the jerk. Why are you staying with this man? He has to play video games or he'll spend all the money and go out to the bar? Nope. Either he pulls his head out of his rear and behaves like a responsible adult who respects you and your kids, or he finds a new place to live. Those are his options. OP. I don't know why I'm staying anymore. I feel miserable and do 90% of all parenting and of all the cooking and cleaning, etc. Video game addictions are real. He really needs help. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her fiance? Please let us know. What a disrespectful dude. Glad to hear he hit the road. Stop blaming the person I'm training for the rookie mistakes he's been making? Very well. I used to work as a temp in a cardboard factory. I started out assisting the machine operators in their work, but after the person who managed the materials, cutting forms, printing stamps, and ink, who henceforth shall be referred to as Dave, was forced to take a week off. Paid vacation he was forced to take before the end of the year, and the end of the year rush was coming up. And things went south because the floor managers couldn't keep up with his job and their own at the same time. The company decided we needed a second person to do Dave's job to avoid situations like that in the future. They tested several people by having them work together with Dave for a couple of hours, and apparently I was the only one who did a decent job, and so I was told that Dave would be training me. I was never asked if I was interested. I didn't even know they were looking for someone to help Dave until I arrived at work one Monday and my schedule said I would be working with Dave. Of course, I didn't mind, because since I was already capable of helping operate 8 of the 10 machines in the factory, I figured this was a great way to further solidify an actual contract with the company. Now, during his week off, Dave had met a woman and they had started dating. She would constantly text him while he was at work, and it showed in his productivity. Of course, COO figured his drop in productivity was because I was slowing him down. As time went on, Dave's girlfriend moved in with him. Now, I haven't mentioned this yet, but the factory had a 2-shift system, early shift and late shift. Most of us worked in rotating shifts, but Dave had a fixed early shift because he had to be there on Monday mornings. Now, this meant Dave and his girlfriend could never go out on weekends and even had to go to bed quite early. So Dave requested to be put back on rotating shifts once he had finished training me. The COO said he would look into it, but kept giving Dave excuses. So Dave started interviewing for another job. Then came the day me and Dave were called into the COO's office and got yelled at for not pulling our weight and stuff like that. One of the things mentioned was repeated tardiness. Dave couldn't deny that one. He had overslept several times in the last few months, but I had only been tardy once because of a flat tire. So wanting to set the record straight, I tried to interject about my flat tire, and the COO snapped at me to keep my trap shut while he's talking. So after his rant and he dismisses us from his office, I once again bring up the flat tire, and then he just snaps at me again that I should have just avoided having a flat tire. That was the last drop for Dave. He got home, wrote his letter of resignation, mailed it to the COO, and accepted one of the job offers he had gotten that week. For the next 3 months, I'm stuck doing all the work on my own. Also during this time, due to a change in the laws in my country, I might become homeless unless I get a contract. So I start asking the COO for a contract, since I've been there 2.5 years as a temp at this point. Just like with Dave, he keeps giving me excuses. After an incident with them refusing any vacation time request I put in that included a Monday, they finally gave me someone to train to be my second. Let's call him Abdul. About a month after I started training Abdul, I get called into the floor manager's office. Apparently, a mistake was made somewhere, and he asks me how it happened. Now that was the first week I was letting Abdul work independently without me constantly telling him what to do. So I tell the floor manager that Abdul had done that job and I had not yet had the chance to inspect his work. The manager grumbles but just dismisses me. A week later, I get called in again for a similar situation. So after I point out that Abdul is learning and mistakes will be made. So this time, the manager blows up at me that I have to stop blaming everything on Abdul, and if I blame one more mistake on Abdul being a rookie, he's getting me fired. This is where the compliance comes in. Around this time, me and Abdul were put in opposing shifts. My first order of business every day would be to double check all of Abdul's work and fix any mistakes. I couldn't inform him of his mistakes, so he kept making them. Abdul also started to get sneaky. You see, part of our tasks had to be done in an area of the factory where only the 2 of us would frequently go. So Abdul would do all of the work that was to be done where people could see him work, leaving me with all the tasks behind the scenes, meaning I was never anywhere to be found. We also had these big barrels of ink, which were hooked up to a machine that mixed the basic colors of ink into other colors. Abdul had always refused to change these barrels when they were empty. He would usually state he hadn't had time, even though making sure those barrels aren't empty was a priority job. This eventually all culminates into a moment about 8 months after Dave left, where I am once again called into the COO's office. I'm thinking I'm finally getting my contract after 3 years as a temp. I'm also convinced Abdul got a contract the week before, though Abdul and the COO have always denied that. Instead, I'm told I'm fired. The COO also goes out of his way to inform me that he's been wanting to fire me for 6 months now because he blames me for Dave quitting, but was asked not to by the floor managers until I had trained someone to replace me, and they considered Abdul to be ready to do the job now. He also told me that he did appreciate the work I did. He just had a problem with me personally. After my meeting with the COO, I make my round of the factory to inform my coworkers that I've been fired and to say goodbye. The look on Abdul's face was pure panic. He suddenly realized that despite me demonstrating how to change those ink barrels, he had never actually done it himself, and as such, didn't remember how to do it. A week after I left, I got a message from one of my former coworkers that the entire factory was looking to go to the COO's office and demand they rehire me, because Abdul was not only doing a poor job, but he was also being a megalomaniac. I told her not to bother, because if they did rehire me, it would only make the COO hate me even more. Several months after, another former coworker informed me that not even a month after I was fired, Abdul was demoted back to assistant machine operator, and one of the floor managers had to take over his tasks full-time. Am I the jerk for telling my wife I shouldn't be poor each month while she still has a ton of money? Hey everyone. Me, 35 male, and my wife, 36 female, have been married for 3 years. I have 2 kids from my first marriage who are 17 and 13, and she has 4 kids who are 17, 15, 12, and 8. I have 50-50 custody of my kids. She has full custody of her kids, and their dad is way behind on child support, so she provides all their financial support. I want to preface this by saying my wife and I keep our finances separate. My wife makes more than double what I do. She gets $50 an hour, and I get $22 an hour. It's always been like that. We agreed when we moved in together we would split the bills equitably based on our incomes. She ended up covering basically all household expenses: mortgage, utilities, cable, internet, food, etc. I would cover 1 week's worth of groceries and my car payment, car and motorcycle insurance, gas, cell phone, vapes, etc. This all changed when I wrecked my car earlier this year. I went shopping with my wife for a new car and really wanted an SUV. My wife made me look at cars too, because they're a lot cheaper, but I had my mind set. When we sat down to finance it, they told me my payments would be about $850 a month versus about $380 a month for the car. I decided on the SUV, and my wife seemed upset. Anyway, my insurance readjusted after the accident, and with my car payment and other expenses, I barely have $100 in expendable income each month. My wife has fun money and still throws a lot into savings and projects around the house. I was speaking about being frustrated about this with my sister, and she mentioned that a sign of financial mistreatment is limiting access to household money. So I approached my wife and said I wanted to combine our accounts, that I shouldn't live like a pauper while she has money to throw around, and she told me that it was my own decision that led me to not have a lot of disposable income, and that if we wanted to discuss a budget for fun money for each of us, we could. I got really upset and told her it isn't loving or right for her to have so much left while I barely have 2 pennies to rub together. Things got heated, and I'm staying at my sister's for the weekend. I don't think wanting things to be even is so wrong, but my wife is kind of right that if I got a cheaper car, I would have had more money. So, am I the jerk? You're the jerk. Your income covers 1 week of food for your combined family of 8, and the rest goes to things just for you. Your car payment, your insurance, your vapes, etc. Who pays for the kids' activities, clothes, shoes, etc.? She's covering the roof over your head and the rest of the household bills, plus raising 4 kids with no child support and no financial help from you. This is not financial mistreatment. Her not handing over money to you for fun when you don't take on responsibilities and you make bad financial decisions on a car payment is not financial mistreatment. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know. There's a reason they don't teach financial education in school. A population of generally financially illiterate people are much easier to capitalize on. You want to fire me to save a buck? Go right ahead. So I recently met up with my uncle, and while talking about my major, programming computer science, he told me a story of when he got a promotion, his current position, by getting fired. Several years ago, my uncle, Dan, had a jerk of a boss who would always flaunt his status of being a manager to the lower-ranked employees and would also be critical of them for the smallest things, taking 2 or 3 minutes too long on breaks, talking to your coworker for even a second, or even taking a sip from your water bottle at your desk. My uncle and his coworkers hated this guy but they loved the job, so they just put up with him for the time being. Uncle Dan told me it was so bad, nobody wanted to even interact with him outside of work, and he wasn't invited to any parties or get-togethers either. One day, boss decides to save money for the company by firing Dan for poor performance, and tells him the reason why is because they can rehire for cheaper. Now, Dan is a calm and logical man. He's very skilled in programming and has years of experience under his belt by that point in his life, so he knows there would be loads of companies fighting for him. Dan didn't put up a fight about it and just cleared out his desk that day, and a month later, while looking for other jobs, he was called by boss telling him he can have his job back, and when Dan refused, because he had a few offers, boss revealed that he was in trouble for firing him with the president. Uncle Dan explained to me that he coded the system they used to distribute assignments and organize tasks, which earned him the president's respect for his skill and expertise. So when he found out he was replaced with someone who, as Dan put it, wouldn't know his backside from an array, he was understandably livid, especially since he didn't hear about it until just now. So boss was forced to offer Dan his position and a raise to convince him to come back, was demoted, and was even more ostracized for the way he looked down on people in the past. It was a funny story. He gets fired and then is given an even better position and pay because his boss was trying to save the company money. He still has that position today, and his pay has only gotten better due to his skills, but the boss couldn't stand being on the same level as the lesser employees he mocked, so he's not there anymore. Karen asked me to babysit for her today while I was working on a boat. Was on a client's boat to take measurements for a job they'd like me to do. The place they're docked is alongside a lovely sidewalk that's open to the public. I was on the front deck when I heard a family walk by. I was aware of them, but I didn't look up until, "Excuse me." It spooked me, as they were so close, but I looked up. A mother and her kid were standing there on the sidewalk in front of the boat. "Sorry, you snuck up on me. Can I help you?" Sometimes people stop to ask me directions to a bathroom or are curious about what I'm doing, so randomly striking up a conversation isn't uncommon, and I'm happy to help and make a bit of conversation. "Hey, can you watch my kid for a minute?" No explanation, no greeting, nothing. I was stunned into silence for a second while my brain tried to process. The mother took this time to interject before I could reply. "It's okay, she can just hang out on your boat with you." She what? Her kid looked to be around 5 or so. Before she could start walking toward the pier, I finally gained enough brain power to speak. No, sorry, this isn't even my boat." "Oh, well, whose boat is it?" Like it's relevant. "This is my client's boat." "Can she come on?" "Ma'am, I'm working," I said, raising my voice a bit, holding up a bunch of measuring tools. "It's just for a minute," she urged. I was appalled. "Sorry, no can do." I was about to say more, but she interrupted before I could continue. "Well, can you get off the boat and watch her here then?" I gave her another stunned look. "I'm working," I said a bit slower, "and I'm sure my boss wouldn't appreciate me watching a stranger's kid while I'm on the clock." Again, I was about to say more, but her kid was whining and pulling on her mother's hand. "Fine," she snapped suddenly, taking her kid away up the steps. Not gonna lie, it was really odd and unnerving, and my heart was beating really fast. I'm legitimately shocked. I should ask the owner of the boat if they can reverse their boat into the space next time so I don't have to face the general public while working anymore. Am I the jerk for tricking my husband into eating the food I cooked by making him think his mom sent it? My husband, Mickey, loves his mom's cooking. He always praises her for the food she makes and even mentioned it in his groom speech at the wedding. I consider myself a good cook. In fact, I'm going to just say that I'm even better than his mom. But the problem is, he doesn't even want to try my cooking or give me a chance to prove it. I thought this would change after marriage, but 5 months later, nothing's changed. What does he eat if he's not eating what I'm cooking? He's requested that his mom send him a meal every day to eat for dinner after getting off of work, except for the weekend where we go over to her house and we eat breakfast, lunch, dinner, and dessert there. Every single day, he'd come home and ask if his mom sent him a meal. I grew irritated of this, and whenever I try to offer him to taste any of the wasted food that I cook, he'd lay in bed and say he's full. So I came up with an idea. I cooked him the same meal his mom sent him that day and put it aside till he got home. He asked if his mom sent a meal for dinner, and I said yes and served him my own version of the meal, not hers. He didn't notice anything different. He ate the whole thing with no hesitation while I sat across from him, asking him questions about how good the meal was. He went on, praising it, saying how perfect, exceptional it was, and how it was just what he needed after a long day at work. I smiled and said, "You're welcome." He froze and looked at me for a minute, looked down at the plate, then back at me and said, "Wait, you made this, didn't you?" I said, "With my own hand and from scratch." His face suddenly went red, and he got upset and said that this was not cool. I told him he never... What is wrong with this guy? I told him he never even gave me a chance to show him how good my cooking is, and that he's probably just used to his mom's cooking and is rejecting any other alternatives, which is unfair to me. He said that I shouldn't have lied to him and basically tricked him into eating food that he had no idea where it came from. I said he liked it and admitted that it was good, so what's the issue? He got up from his seat, threw the napkin, and said that I was unbelievable, then walked out. He got quiet the rest of the evening, then posted about it on his Facebook in a vague post about being tricked into eating someone's food like that. I felt guilty and bad, thinking maybe I really shouldn't have done this, but I was frustrated with how he kept turning down every meal I tried to cook him and then say, "No thanks, I prefer my mom's food." Am I the jerk? Info: why would you marry someone who refuses to eat your food and makes his mother make him dinner every day? Also, does his mom really want to make his food for the rest of his life, or has he made up a story to get her to do it? Also, what will he eat when his mom passes and he still is a grown adult? Not the jerk. First of all, stop going to his mother's every weekend to eat. He can if he wants to, but you don't need to. Come on, girl, have some respect for yourself. Let his mother cook for him and be free of that chore. What you don't see is that he's manipulating you. He's letting you know every single day that you are not good enough for him. He prefers his mother over you. He's doing this to destroy your self-esteem, and he does it on purpose. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know. Life's too short to spend it with people who don't respect you. You know Karen stay dropping facts, bruh. Karen, those comics are worth a fortune. One of my all-time favorite stories to tell when hanging out with other comic book geeks. Backstory. So I used to be a huge comic book fan and buyer. I hung out at the local comic book shop for hours at a time, a couple of times a week, not counting shipment day, and talked shop with the owner, the guy who ran the shop, and the myriad of regular customers. Shop owner I'll dub Mr. Albertson. Guy who ran the shop will be Jeff, other monikers as people get introduced. The comic book shop was located on a busy street, and the back part of this shop was a living quarters for Mr. Albertson. There was no public restroom in the shop area. Now, Mr. Albertson was a very nice, intelligent guy, someone I called friend and respected. Sadly, though, he had issues when it came to hygiene. The bathroom in his living quarters was just plain nasty. As I had worked in rental property make-ready for over 20 years, when I say nasty, I mean get the flamethrower and burn it nasty. I knew this because I fixed the faucet in the bathroom once. Then I immediately went home and took a nice hot bath. Jeff, understandably, refused to use this bathroom. He would hold it until lunchtime and use the public restroom at a local restaurant. Afterwards, he would wait until he got home. Sometimes, however, Jeff just couldn't wait. The need was too urgent. When this happened, he would close the shop and take a break. Setup. One day while I was in the shop, I could tell Jeff was in some amount of distress. I asked him what was wrong, and he informed me that he really had to use the restroom, as something he ate was not agreeing with him. But he couldn't just close the shop due to the fact the shop's biggest customer was expected to come in at any time now to pick up his weekly order. I thought it over and told Jeff that I could stay and watch the store. I knew Mr. Big Bucks always paid with a check, so if he came in for his order while Jeff was away, I would simply tell him the amount Jeff always pre-calculated on the previous order invoice. Then I would take the check and slide it under the cash register. Jeff knew me very well from many years of hanging out in the shop, and my family's reputation for honesty and integrity was well known. Jeff readily agreed and made a run for it. 5 minutes later, Mr. Big Bucks walks in the door and asks where Jeff is. I tell him Jeff had to answer nature's call really badly. Therefore, I was watching the store until he got back. I went behind the counter, pulled out Mr. Big Bucks' weekly superhero addiction delivery and the previous invoice order form. Mr. Big Bucks checked the order, approved the invoice amount, and wrote out the check. I then slid it under the cash register. Now, normally, Mr. Big Bucks is in a hurry, grabs his order, and leaves. But today, he was checking the inventory when Mr. Action walked in the door. Mr. Action is not just a regular, but a respected dealer in comic books and collectibles. Mr. Big Bucks and Mr. Action struck up a conversation. I just leaned against the counter and continued to read the latest issue of Amazing Spider-Man. A few pages later, a nasty scowl walked in the door, followed a second later by the face wearing it. It was a 30-ish something woman, hair pulled back, tight in a pigtail, pink sweatshirt with pink across the chest. She was carrying a cardboard box that looked like it had been in a flood. "You, give me $1,000, she said as she heaved the box onto the counter. "Excuse me?" I replied while flinching back from the stench of mold coming from the box. "Give me $1,000. Why?" "You buy comics. These are comics, so give me my money." More than a little thrown off by the demand for money and the attitude, I stuttered out a response. First off, I don't work here. Second, this shop isn't a dealer in old comics." Miss Nasty Scowl cut me off. "I know very well you work here. My boyfriend told me that the fat guy who works behind the counter would give me money for these old comics. He also told me not to let you cheat me. I want $1,000 now." I looked down at my belly. If Gabriel Iglesias was around back then, he would say I was just shy of being fluffy. "Look, lady, I don't work here. The regular fat guy is running." A snort and a guffle came from the comic racks. "Shut it, you two," I said over my shoulder. "I don't work here. I'm just watching the shop while the regular fat guy who runs the store is out on an errand. He'll be back soon, but even still, he doesn't buy old comics," I reiterated. Miss Nasty Scowl actually growled at me. "Even if there is another fat guy who normally runs this place, you are here now. You are behind the counter now, so you will give me my money now." Mr. Action tried to say something, but he was cut off by Miss Nasty Scowl screaming, "You shut up. I wasn't talking to you, you ugly old jerk." Well, I've been told I have the patience of a saint, but I got my limits. I looked at a visibly irritated Mr. Big Bucks and a now steaming, mad Mr. Action. Suddenly, I had a thought. That thought bumped into a few others, and within seconds, I had a funny idea. Turning back to Miss Nasty Scowl, I said in a calm voice, "You're right, miss. I apologize. You see, we get people coming in here trying to sell fake old comics. We have to be careful, you understand?" "Whatever. Just give me my money." "Let me take a look at what I'm sure is a fine collection," I said with my best shoveling it deep smile. When I opened the old cardboard box's top, I nearly gagged at the smell of mold. Inside was indeed comics. Comics that looked like they may have been stored in a cellar that flooded. They were covered in mold, sticking together, and just in completely rotten shape. After flipping through a few that were not stuck together, I let out a loud gasp of shock. "My God!" I yelled. "Mr. Action, come here quick. Look what she has." "I'm fine over here," he said while pinching his nose. "No, look," I firmly said while turning my head and giving a conspirator's wink and smirk at Mr. Action. Curious as to what I was up to, Mr. Action followed my prompt and came behind the counter. To Miss Nasty Scowl, "You're in luck today. This is Mr. Action. He's our local authority on comic book appraisals. From what I've only glanced at, this collection of yours is worth way more than a measly $1,000. I'd say it's worth $20,000 at least. Right, Mr. Action?" Mr. Action has known me for many years. He was, in fact, one of my teachers in high school and had seen my sense of humor in action many times. He had no idea where I was going with this, but he knew it would go someplace ridiculously funny, for us at least. "Good Lord, these are Casper the Friendly Ghost comics, Richie Rich, and these are Archie comics," giving Miss Nasty Scowl his most eager expression. "Do you have any idea how rare these comics are?" "No. Are they worth more than $1,000? "Way more," I declared. "In fact, Mr. Big Bucks, didn't you once buy an Archie comics collection at auction? What did you pay for it? 10 to 12 grand? I'm sorry, miss, but we are just a small-town collector shop. We simply do not have the budget to purchase this expensive collection. You need to take these to one of the big stores in the city. Mr. Action, what is the name of that dealer you are always complaining about? You know, the one who you said stole clients from you?" I asked, knowing he would get my prompt. Sure enough, a nasty smile crossed his face. "Mr. Burns, let me write down his address for you, my dear," Mr. Action said as he reached for a pen and a scrap piece of paper. Now, with address in hand and a greedy smile plastered on her face, Miss Nasty Scowl carried her box of moldy comics out of the store. "What the heck was that all about?" Mr. Big Bucks asked, still confused. Mr. Action and I set about explaining the prank we just pulled on the woman and a crooked dealer both Mr. Action and I had run afoul of on separate occasions. 20 minutes later, Jeff returned. The three of us ensured he was okay. When he asked if anything happened while he was gone, the three of us just shook our heads, and I said, "Nope." The next week, I went in to hang out with Jeff for a bit. Jeff looked at me for a second, then said, "Funny thing happened yesterday. A really upset woman came in here screaming about how our other employee lied to her. I thought she was talking about the owner, Mr. Albertson, at first, but then she said he was another fat guy like me. I told her I was the only employee." "What did she say then?" I asked. "Nothing. She just screamed like a maniac and stormed out, leaving a box full of worthless old moldy comics." New neighbor destroyed my vegetable garden on purpose. We moved into our new house in January of this year. There's a side yard of grass and sod that belongs to our property that separates my house from my neighbor's home. Everything seemed great when we moved in, until I planted a small raised vegetable garden in the side yard, only place in the yard with enough sun to grow veggies. The elderly neighbor was unhappy that I had pulled up the grass and said she was going to get my husband on me. My husband loves my garden and the fresh veggies that we get from it daily. Neighbor was quiet for a few months, happily accepted any produce I offered to her. Then out of the blue, she calls code enforcement on my garden, saying it was full of dead plants. Code enforcement came out, saw a garden with no dead plants and tons of melons and peppers and laughed, said that I was not violating code and my garden looked great. Neighbor wasn't happy that code enforcement did not make me remove my garden, so she proceeded to trespass onto my property and mow over all of my watermelon and cantaloupe vines, destroying all of the melons that weren't ripe yet. I approached her and told her not to trespass or mow on my property. She turned away and walked off without saying anything and continued to mow on my property. The next day, I go to throw some trash in the outside bin and I see the neighbor on my property spreading poison on my organic veggie garden. I started filming her, told her to stop, and she continued. That night, both of my dogs got very sick. They were throwing up. They had been in my fenced backyard only, not near the front where I had videotaped her doing what she did. So I called the cops. They came and talked with her, told her she could not come on my property. She screamed and had a fit at me in front of the cop. The neighbor also smiled when I mentioned my dogs getting sick. The cop saw her smile and told me to immediately get cameras put up everywhere as my animals didn't appear to be safe in my yard. I didn't press charges as I just wanted her to stop and leave me alone. However, she is now continuing to trespass on my property. It's all caught on video. She literally walked past the no trespassing sign to mow 4 to 5 feet onto my property. My husband wants to let it go. I fear for my 2-year-old daughter's safety and for the safety of my 2 dogs. She is blatantly disregarding the orders of the police officer. I'm a wreck over all of this. I'm going to have to remove all of the poisoned soil and remediate the ground. All of my other neighbors have been super supportive of my plight and tell me not to back down to her bullying attempts. What should I do? Update. Thank you everyone for the thoughts. I will be going to the police station tomorrow to press charges. Why the heck wouldn't you press charges after all of that? My goodness, that's a no-brainer. She is, as evidenced by your OP, she's obviously not going to stop. I mean, you ought to know that. You've asked her how many times already, and she still blatantly disregards and disrespects your wishes. Apparently, this is a game to her. If her smiling after hearing your dogs got sick in front of a law enforcement officer isn't enough to tell you she's a psycho, then I don't know what will. Press charges and press them hard. Your family is in obvious danger. And build a fence with a locking access gate. Good luck. Well, what would you do in this situation? Would you report your neighbor to the police again or not? Please let us know. I can't even tell you what I'd do to them. Let's just say they'd be making a Lifetime movie about me, and boy would it be good. Call me a sad, poor person? Well, time to ruin your career. Let me start off by saying that my family is financially stable and have been well off since the days of my great-grandfather. We use the money to fund our charities and put almost all the money we earn back into our business, which is a decently sized attraction ranch that's sort of become a small town attraction here. We are also not white, but Native American, with my father coming from Mohawk ancestry and my mother coming from the Haida ancestry. We also pay an affordable living wage to all our employees because we value them, and that's how you keep the good employees, and they're like a family to us. Because of this, our family is very well known to the local community. Now, for privacy reasons, I do not use my real name online. I have two names, my more traditional native name and my more modern English name. I use my English name online with my mother's maiden name. My brother and I have very strange and very unconventional English names, as we were named after characters from a movie about a boy, a book, a warrior, and a child empress with an impossibly annoying name. We only use these names when needed, so we both use them for online platforms. Let's say that we are Bastion and Artax. I recently got married, and my partner and I decided it was time for us to look at houses. We decided to look at some houses in the area where we lived, and we thought it was time to speak to a financial advisor. After a few days of waiting, I was able to get in touch with a local advisor my father had dealt with over Facebook, whom I have never met but have heard a great deal about, and he told me that he was holding a Facebook Live seminar later that day about mortgaging and property ownership. I had some time, so I decided to sit in on the seminar. To say the seminar was a joke is laughable at best. The man running it was a former athlete who had been dropped by his minor level team due to injury, and his only saving grace was finding work for the bank. This I found out on his LinkedIn profile page, which he had sent a link to at the beginning of the seminar while he spoke about his credentials. He had us sit for half an hour before he decided it was time for all of us to participate and had us react to things. Use the hug reaction if you like this, or the wow reaction if you don't. Use the sad reaction for this, or the thumbs up if that was helpful. Eventually, he asked a question about home ownership. Now, technically, I do own a home already, as I have equal ownership of the house my brother lives in, by his insistence, though I think it was just to boost my credit score when I turned 18, and he began to give examples of houses on the market that those in the seminar would be interested in buying. At the end of each one, he would do the react one again, but this time with the anger react if you don't like it, or the laugh reaction if you did. Well, I saw a house that would have been perfect for my partner and I, so I clicked on the laugh reaction. What came next, I was not prepared for. Instead of continuing on with the seminar, the man running it decided he wanted to vet those who said they wanted the houses he had shown. I honestly have no idea why, but when he came to my name, I guess he clicked on my profile and saw my picture. Now, my picture isn't the worst thing in the world, it's just a picture of me in a silly Halloween wig smiling. I'm a goofy person and all my friends know it. He had judged me based on my profile picture alone. He couldn't see my profile because we aren't friends. Yay for privacy settings, and said the following. Why is there always at least one sad poor person with a weird hair color in these seminars? They're for actual people who want to actually buy a house. You can go back to wherever you came from and buy a house with whatever money they used there. Now, what the advisor hadn't known was that I had been recording the seminar through my computer so I could show my partner what had been said. They were out of the house at the time and had asked me to record it for them on my computer, and to go through it with them when they came home. To say I was upset by this was a slight understatement. I was mad, not for me, but for others this guy had probably treated this way. He had based a decision solely on the way I looked, without knowing me, my financial background, or anything else about me. How many others had he done this to? Then a thought came across my mind. This is a man who had dealings with my father, his friends, and their friends, all of which had their investments in the bank that he worked in. Now, I wasn't a member of said bank, but I had been planning on using them when the time came for buying a house. I wanted to get back at this guy who had treated me so poorly, and I wasn't even a customer. Now, it was time for the pro-revenge. I started off by calling my parents, both of whom have sizable investments in the bank as well as business accounts with them. I told them what had happened and sent them the recorded video where you could clearly see my profile in the shot and what he had said. I swear, I saw my father turn as bright as a red LED light, and my mother tried to calm him down, as she usually does, but I knew it was no use. My father left to call his friends, while my mother made sure I was all right. I am. See, my parents were one of the two big accounts at the bank where this advisor worked. The other belonged to one of my dad's longtime friends and the father of one of my best friends. I told my parents that I just wanted to make sure that they hadn't been treated like I had been, since my mom often dyes her hair crazy colors when we do fundraising at the ranch, and my dad has had to give himself an undercut for a few years due to needing surgery, and he has hair longer than I do. I wouldn't know the repercussions of this one phone call until the next day, when my dad showed up at my current residence and told me he was taking me out for the day with his buddy. I said I'd go with them because you do not say no to two giant 6'10" native dudes who handle horses day in and day out and are built like brick houses. I got into the truck and we drove into town. We arrived at the bank after a quick stop to Starbucks, and the three of us entered. My father and his friend were immediately greeted by the greeter at said branch, and the first thing my father's friend says is that he wants to meet with the branch manager ASAP. My father says the same, and the three of us wait as she gets the manager on the phone. The bank manager, who I have met before, greets the three of us. My father tells me to wait in the lobby, and I watch as they disappear into the manager's office. Now, what I'll tell you next are the words that came straight from my father's mouth. As the three of them sat in the manager's office, both my father and his friend say that they're going to close all of their accounts, effective immediately. All the stocks, investments, business accounts, everything will be closed by the time they leave the office. The branch manager is stunned and asks why, to which my father pulls out his phone, and he plays the video I had sent him to said manager. My father says the manager looked as white as snow when he saw it, and immediately I could hear this from the lobby, yelled out for said financial advisor to, and I quote, "Get in the office right now." That's when I saw the advisor who had belittled me online run into the office. The manager asked the advisor to explain himself, to which the advisor tried to play it off as a joke. My father and his friend told him they had the entire recording of the seminar, and that no, he wasn't joking, and they were now pulling all their accounts out of said bank. The advisor, now seeing he had been cornered, practically started begging them to stay, saying that he will apologize to me and that it was all taken out of context. My father looked to his friend, who then said, "Sounds like something a sad poor person would say." He then made sure his accounts were closed and everything was set before he left the office. My father did the same as the advisor began to tremble. Before he left the office, however, my father extended a hand to the advisor and said, "I think you might have forgotten who I am. I'm Dad's full name, father of Artax, Mom's last name." We left, and a few weeks later, I saw the same advisor as I was walking into town, behind the cash register at the Starbucks. I believe he saw me when I walked in, because he suddenly had something to do in the back room and didn't leave until I left the store. Back into my car and blow me off for months? You'll be sorry. This story is from the better part of a decade ago, when I was pretty naive and only a couple years out of high school. I had a bit of a rough patch after dropping out of university and ended up living in my '06 Corolla, manual transmission with roller windows, the bare bones build, for a number of months. At some point during this time, I was waiting for a pump to open at a gas station with my younger sister when another sedan backs out of one of those spots straight into the side of my vehicle. I got out right away as the line wasn't moving and surveyed the damage, while the two gentlemen from the offending vehicle approached me. As I observed 2 or 3 pretty obvious dings on 2 of the panels that join near the rear wheel well, the man from the passenger seat engaged communication, telling me that he will give me $500 to take care of this right now. Now, I may have been, and still may be, naive, but I had been in one prior accident, literally the first time I drove with my brand spanking new driver's license to get a gallon of milk for Mom, and admitted fault very quickly, and was determined to be less panicked and more reserved in the event of another accident. So I declined the man's offer and asked to exchange information with the driver, to which he supplied his driver's license, which I then took a picture of, and his business card. His title was the Senior Vice President Relationship Manager at a bank a couple of towns over, and I also made sure to take a shot of his license plate. Satisfied that I knew who he was, although with a nagging doubt in my mind about not actually collecting any insurance information, I continued with my evening and enjoyed sushi with my sister and parents. Initially, upon my contacting the offending party, communications were relatively smooth, with Mr. Banker asking me to get an official estimate, to which I obliged. I didn't know anything about vehicle service beyond buying oil changes and fuel, so I just looked up a body shop near me and went there. It was a shop one town over with a name like Frank's Auto Shop or the like, obviously a local kind of place. They assessed the damage, which was purely cosmetic damage, but it would require them to disassemble most of the part side of the vehicle, as the Corolla is, as I understand, designed to be cheap to manufacture and reliable, but not convenient to do localized repairs. The estimate put us at about $1,600. I made no delay in relaying said estimate to Mr. Banker, who called me post-haste to inform me that that's ridiculous. There's no way it costs that much. They're not a reputable shop. He then informs me to go to a different shop, which is a nationwide chain, which he says is reputable. Basically, all but accusing me of trying to take him for a ride. I'm living in this car, man. I'm just trying not to get done out of what little I have. Anyways, I oblige him because I feel it's more likely to lead to a resolution than arguing while I'm all flustered and nervous. But remember, I'm a sheltered 20-year-old who has no idea how any of this stuff actually works. So when I look up the nearest branch under his preferred brand name and go there, I discover it's a branch that actually specializes in German cars like Porsche. I have no idea if this impacted their estimate in terms of hours worked, as obviously the Corolla would be a bit of an unfamiliar machine to them. But regardless, the new estimate put us closer to $2,000. I had a grin walking out of that office. So I send Mr. Banker the new estimate from his oh-so-official shop. Turns out, local guys actually can give great deals. Who knew? And I believe he pretty much ghosted me from there. 1 or 2 texts may have been exchanged. It's a little fuzzy. The gist of it was, he didn't want to deal with the situation, and I think he knew that I was a nervous and somewhat out-of-my-depth kid, so he wanted to leverage his confidence and bully me into silence. Reddit, I'm not proud of it, but it worked for a time. I was not really doing what I needed to do or thinking the way I needed to think at this point in my life, so among all the other things I was neglecting, this situation fell by the wayside after a couple of weeks. My parents, frustrated with my lack of life progress, were categorically unsupportive, despite my father being an attorney. As far as he was concerned, he paid for the car, which I was grateful for, and the insurance for that first couple months, and that's all he needed to contribute. I don't blame him, but at the time, it was pretty deflating, as I always was hoping that he would be my ace in the hole. After a number of months, probably around 3 to 4, I finally found a job. It was a really sketchy, pure commission sales job over the phone that is a whole saga unto itself, but it did come with a sales manager who had some experience dealing with petty squabbles, and it was he who was my savior. After a couple weeks or so of working for him, somehow the situation came up in conversation. Honestly, it probably didn't take that long. I tend to just blabber on and on about whatever's on my mind, and he suggested that, as I knew where he worked and had his license so I knew where he lived, I should make it personal. Under new boss tutelage, I proceeded to type up a written sequence of events, starting with the gas station incident, including the multiple estimates and my open communication and its reception of demeaning demands, and I printed multiple copies. I do consider myself to be a somewhat forceful and yet still conservative writer, if that makes sense. I described the events that transpired with no flattery to the involved parties, but also no embellishment, judgment, or personal opinions. It's fantastic what you can achieve by choosing words with just a bit of a sinister tint, but which still describe the situation literally. Then, with boss encouragement and permission, I took a long lunch with him tagging along. We loved to go to a local barbecue place, and we visited his condo building. I was lucky enough to be let in by a neighbor and proceeded to tape 1 copy of my little novel to his door for all the neighbors to read if they got home before him, and then slid another one under his door to make sure he had a chance to experience it himself. But we weren't finished yet. His neighbors might shame him, but they really have no real leverage. That's just the petty part. Next, we visited his bank. Now, I was really hoping to catch him there, fluttering as my heart was, because I knew that with my boss right behind me to catch me if I faltered, I would be able to confront him in glorious verbal combat. Unfortunately, I didn't get to live out my fantasy of little guy puffed up with big guy behind him cracking his knuckles menacingly just in case things get out of hand. But I did get to meet his boss, who was a lovely lady who was very open to listening to my explanation of why I was there, and even accepted the packet of papers I had with her own hands. Reddit, at this point I saw the look in her eyes and knew that this would get his attention. I didn't think she cared about me, but I did know that she didn't enjoy being accosted at her place of work by some random, almost teenager to complain about some very sketchy behavior by her big bad senior vice president relationship manager. He texted me the next day. I never found out what kind of repercussions he faced, if any. I don't know if it was the neighbors or his manager who got to him. I can see it going either way. A guy living in a condo such as his probably cares about his image quite a bit, and his neighbors ridiculing him for such a thing could be as impactful as his boss demanding that he resolve the situation ASAP. Who knows? What I do know is that he was still very salty about the situation. I guess with my silence, he had figured he won. And honestly, he probably would have if I hadn't had a boss who took such a liking to me and encouraged me to believe in myself in dealing with the man. His text amounted to, "I've sent the information to my insurance. As of now, I'm not involved." I was so relieved. I felt powerful and gratified, and like I was finally going to be able to move out of my car. My boss slowed me down. Before I could say anything back to Mr. Banker, he told me to just let him dictate. I happily obliged. Paraphrasing, "That's not how this works. You're involved until I'm paid and made whole. I will continue to be in contact about any complications moving forward until the situation is resolved." There was really no benefit to being in contact with him anymore other than rubbing it in his face that we had won, that his bad behavior had only compounded the issue, and now he gets to experience the bitterness of his at-fault accident all over again almost half a year later, along with his neighbors and coworkers knowing about it, and knowing he tried to dodge it, and his manager knowing that it was one of the most baby-faced, nervous, skinniest kids possible coming up and publicly shaming him for what he did. Am I the jerk for missing my daughter's birth? For a little background information, I, 28, male, have a beautiful wife who's 27. We've been trying for a baby for about 3 years now and have known each other since we were in high school. When my wife found out she was pregnant, we were thrilled and have been getting prepared for months now. She's currently 9 months pregnant. My dad is a real jerk, but he keeps me employed. He owns a pretty nice Italian restaurant that has been run by my family for decades. I've worked there since I was about 15, and I'm now the head chef. The problem is, he treats his employees pretty badly, including myself. And if you even miss one shift, you get demoted or even worse, fired. I was in the middle of a very hectic shift on the busiest day of the week when my mother-in-law called saying my wife went into labor and I needed to get to the hospital right away. When I asked my dad if I could go, he said, "You can go if you're okay with being unemployed," which I couldn't risk because after the baby was born, my wife would be off work for quite a while to be a stay-at-home mom. The reason my dad was so mad at the idea of me leaving was because he was understaffed and really needed my help. When I tried calling my mother-in-law, she wouldn't pick up, so I just kept working, and I thought that I could explain myself later. Later, when it was time to go home, I drove to the hospital, but mother-in-law and her sisters refused to let me in the room and called me names like a bad father and a bad husband. When it was finally time to leave the hospital, my wife and newborn baby went home with mother-in-law, and they haven't spoken to me in days, even when I try and apologize and explain myself. I thought I was doing the right thing, but I need to know. Am I the jerk? You're the jerk. Here's a news flash. Lots of restaurants need staff. You should have gotten out from under your father's thumb a long time ago, before it affected your wife and your baby. I'd say more, but I don't want to hold you up because you have a lot of groveling to do. A lot. You're the jerk. Grow a backbone. You left your wife to go through one of the hardest things without you because you can't set boundaries, and you didn't even have the decency to let her know you weren't coming. Obviously, your dad is the biggest jerk, but you're a close second for allowing this and for basically abandoning your wife with no explanation. You're the jerk. You had 9 months, and even years since you've been planning to have a kid for a long time, even before your wife became pregnant, to make contingency plans and work out with your dad how to keep the restaurant staffed during your daughter's birth. You apparently failed to take even cursory steps to plan for time off around the time of the birth. That's a serious failing as a parent. What was your plan? Were you going to leave your recovering wife home with a newborn and never take any time off to help her and to bond with your kid? Not the jerk, but your dad is. Her mom and sister are too. It would be irresponsible to quit your job without another job lined up when you have a baby and your wife to take care of. She had a support system and she wasn't alone. You made a tough decision and chose the best long-term option. You can keep your job while looking for another without leaving your family broken and penniless. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or not? Please let us know. Dude tries to ensure that his family has a roof over their head and everyone despises him for it. That's Reddit for you. And that's your baby, bruh. Those in-laws have no right to keep you from seeing it. Am I the jerk for kicking my sister out for eating all my croissants? My older sister, Rosa, and I are not that close. Rosa and I come from a family with money. Growing up, we lived in a nice house with staff to do stuff for us. Our parents never encouraged us to be independent and spoiled us beyond compare. I never got a normal childhood, and I got the biggest culture shock when I left for university. I had to unlearn a lot of the thoughts that I grew up with. I moved away from my parents and I rarely speak to them. My parents tend to baby Rosa. In my opinion, this has caused her to become very entitled. She overreacts when things don't go her way and complains about everything and everyone when they make small mistakes. I do not speak to her often. A few weeks ago, Rosa called me and told me that my parents kicked her out of their house for a few weeks. She refused to tell me the details, but I could tell that she was very distraught. She asked me if she could stay with me for 2 weeks because she didn't want to live in a hotel. I was a bit hesitant, but my wife, Amy, convinced me to let her stay. The first thing I noticed about Rosa is that she is incapable of doing basic tasks. She can't boil water on the stove, can't boil an egg, and can barely fold her own clothes. On the second day of her stay, she left the stove unattended while she went outside. It's so bad that I almost consider her to be a hazard in the kitchen. Because of Rosa's inability to do anything, it's caused Amy and I to have to do everything for her. We have to constantly clean up for her, and she leaves huge messes, and it gets very frustrating. Amy feels bad for Rosa and offered to teach her a few things. Rosa declined because she doesn't need to, but Amy managed to convince her. Amy tried to teach her how to hold a knife properly, how to fold a t-shirt, and how to make a bed. Instead of trying to learn, Rosa would give up and claim that she couldn't do it, and that it would be much better if Amy did it for her since she's so much better at those things compared to her. Amy tried for a few days before she gave up. Amy made croissants. They took 2 days to make and she made 18 in total. The next day, Amy and I were out all day and didn't get to eat much. Imagine my surprise when Rosa told us that she ate all of the remaining croissants, 16. I got a bit mad and I told her that it was a bit inconsiderate, and she told me that she thought it was okay because the help could just make more. I got so angry, I told her that she can't keep living with us if she acts like an entitled jerk the entire time, and I kicked her out. She started pleading with me, but I insisted. Amy thinks I may have overreacted. Not the jerk. She called your wife the help. Immediate, eatable offense. And doing dangerous things like leaving the stove on might actually be deliberate to make you regret ever asking her to lift a finger, or at minimum, ensuring you don't do it again. Maybe that's too cynical, but I wouldn't put it past someone who'd refer to a sister-in-law or anyone as the help. I'd also be tempted to check the garbage for the 16 croissants. Store employee wouldn't give me my items because I don't have the same last name as my husband. My husband, Will Williams, for the purpose of this story, has a store card for a big box store that sells DIY stuff. I am an authorized user on the card. Even though we've been married 3 years, I didn't take his name. This has never been an issue before today. Will had surgery 2 days ago and decided this morning that he wanted to do some projects around the house while he's stuck at home recovering. So he purchased about $250 worth of stuff from the DIY store online and asked that I pick up the items because he can't drive yet. I drive to the DIY store, head to the pickup counter, and show the email and my license when asked. The woman looks at me and says, "You aren't Will Williams?" I explained that no, I am Will's wife, Flamingo Lemon. I'm here to pick up the order. I confirm Will's email address and phone number. According to her, I can't be Will Williams' wife because my last name isn't Williams, it's Lemon, and therefore I'm committing fraud. I showed her on my license that the address listed is the same as the address on the account. Nope, doesn't matter. Since our last names don't match, I'm committing fraud. Will has to pick up his own items. I explained that Will had surgery and has a cast on his leg, which is why he isn't able to pick up the items. I state that I am an authorized user on the card and that the email address Will put in when he placed is one I know. I've had 0 issues picking up stuff for him before. She starts trying to bend my license in half and I pull it out of her hand. I tell her this is ridiculous and ask when she gets off work so I can speak with someone who understands that people can be married and share a card and have a different last name. Then I walk away. As I'm leaving, she's yelling to me that I'm committing fraud, so the whole staff hears. I did yell back that I'm not, and I don't know what your problem is, and I walked out. But I'm fuming right now. Will is also upset because now I have to drag him and his sore, casted leg back to the DIY store to get our stuff. I really want to call the manager and complain. Yes, it's a Karen move, especially with her trying to destroy my license. But I worry if I do, we will never see our stuff. Am I the jerk here? Edit. I went back to the store with my husband's license and a note from him saying I could pick up the order. Left Will in the recliner. We looked all over the DIY store's app and website to see if there was a way to authorize a different pickup person, but couldn't figure it out, especially since my info was already on the order. I got the order through their drive-up and they didn't check any licenses, especially after all that BS. I called the store number once I got home and spoke with the manager. They apologized for the employee and offered me a $5 account credit. $5? They better give you a little something more after all that crap. The time I employed the Worcester Sheriff to bring the Worcester Police to court. Years ago, I got a speeding ticket in Worcester, Massachusetts. It was a typical speed trap where they sit at the bottom of a steep hill, knowing that lots of people will exceed the very low speed limit because gravity. It was BS, so I decided to fight it and at least make them work for their $100 fine. I read everything I could on fighting radar tickets, and one strategy was to check whether the police department had proper FCC documents on their radar used. If they don't, the radar info is inadmissible and you probably will win your case. I went to the Worcester police station and found the records department down in the basement. I showed them the ticket and explained that I wanted to view the paperwork for the radar that was used to record my speed. I had to wait a couple minutes, but some official came out and sternly informed me that civilians don't have access to that information. Cue malicious compliance. I asked a few people how you request records for a court case, and it turns out that, at least in Massachusetts, that's one of the things the sheriff's office does. So I went to them, paid them $50, I know, on a $100 ticket, but I've always enjoyed tilting at windmills, and described the documents I required. I have to admit that by the time I had to go to court, I had kind of forgotten about the sheriff's department, but I did notice this police officer sitting in the audience section with all the other people fighting tickets. This guy wasn't your typical police officer though. He was wearing a very fancy uniform and his hat had all kinds of gold braid on it. He did not look happy. Traffic court being traffic court, it's all kinds of disorganized, with a bunch of citizens sitting around waiting for things to start. And of course the proceedings plod along at a snail's pace. Finally, my name is called after about a half an hour, and this police officer comes over to me and explains that he is the captain or lieutenant, I forget now, in charge of the entire records division for the Worcester Police, and he has the radar records in his hand for me to examine. So I look it over, and it seems to all be in order, so I thank him. He's visibly angry about having to spend his morning sitting in traffic court over a $100 citation. Totally worth the $50. To this day, I don't know whether someone at the sheriff's department was just messing with the police department by naming the top guy in the records request, but I thoroughly enjoyed the experience. Don't want to let the citizens see your records? Fine. I would have loved to have been there when the sheriff's department showed up to serve the head guy with the court order. Oh, by the way, I lost the case. Karen is suing someone wrongfully and wants my support. I love my sister dearly and have grown to really appreciate my relationship with her over the years. However, she married a guy who often talks her into doing things that are unnecessary. He's had her work full-time jobs so he can stay home and build a barbecue business for years that never even took off. More recently, my sister was returning home from her job when she was involved in a serious accident. She was hospitalized for a couple of days for observation and missed a week or so of work, but was otherwise okay. The other driver was at fault and assumed all responsibility, and their insurance made a more than generous offer to help my sister get their life back on track. However, her husband, my brother-in-law, decided to get an ambulance-chasing attorney and talked my sister into suing the company that the other driver works for close to $1 million. Keep in mind that there were no substances involved, and the other driver had also just finished her shift at her job, and she was going home as well. My partner and I do not agree with this, nor do we think it's necessary to sue. My sister barely graduated high school, so she was likely never going to make $1 million in her whole life. Additionally, her lawyer told her not to go back to work until the lawsuit is settled. So they've now lost their home, and much of what they own is being repossessed due to non-payment. Their son, my nephew, refuses to come home from college because he's so embarrassed at the situation. My sister wants support for them to continue this lawsuit, and my partner and I are not on board. We think it's cruel to the other driver to not just settle and move on, and it's unethical to sue the other driver's employer for something they had no control over. Am I the jerk for not supporting their frivolous lawsuit? Not the jerk. Stay as far away from this as possible. Your sister and brother-in-law are seeing this as a cash grab. The lawsuit will more than likely be thrown out or dismissed in court. No substances were involved. The other driver and insurance assumed responsibility and they paid out. You can love someone, but not like their choices. This is one of those times. If this is what they're choosing to do, let the consequences of their choices fall where they may. My Karen roommate pulled a robbery prank on me. I, 20 female, live in a very safe city, one of the safest cities in the nation. Due to this and lack of parental regulation as a kid, I never locked my doors. I drive a Wrangler and took the top and doors off and have never had a problem with stealing. I've never locked the doors to my house or apartments. This has never been an issue with my old roommates or family. It's just the way I've developed. My roommate, 19 female, since moving in, has increasingly become more paranoid and anxious. I've known her for years and I've never seen her like this. She thinks there are cameras in her sink. If she gets a bug bite, she assumes she has bugs living in her bed. When she sleeps, she has paralysis where someone comes in to get her. She locks her bedroom door and front door for safety. Knowing this, I've tried to lock the door. However, I don't sometimes. It's a habit I'm trying to break. I came home a week ago. There was crap everywhere. It looked like a mini tornado whirled through my apartment. I went in my room and my TV was gone. My mini boba fridge was gone. All my vintage magazines were gone. So much of my clothes had vanished. It was clear through my eyes that I had been robbed. I sat on my bed and just sat there in shock. On the verge of tears, I called my father who didn't pick up and I was left defeated practically. Then I jumped up because I was worried for my roommate's room. She was sitting there waiting for me. She had all my things in there, pranked me to try and teach me a lesson about locking the door. My problem is that she never even talked to me. I had no idea this was an issue with her before. She said I should have assumed that I need to lock the door out of respect for a shared living space. After trivial arguing, I shut up and went mute, grabbed all my stuff to put in my room, and I've completely ignored her since. I'm upset and I'm not over it. I find her thought process alarming and delusional. A mutual friend says that I'm overreacting and being rude to her when she's going through a hard time. As much as I understand that she's having problems, I have received zero empathy or question of my feelings. I don't think I'm a jerk. I think everyone's out of their minds and I need some time away from the crazies. Edit, update. Oh boy, look, I'm just naive. I honestly didn't know. Thank you to all the people who understand that I wasn't trying to be malicious by forgetting to lock the door. Also, no, my roommate is not insane. She's a close friend of mine and we get along well in every other situation. We do most things together. That's my biggest confusion about this, as she's never had a problem with communication before. So I'm not finding another roommate. She's going to the doctor for her symptoms and help is on the way. Also, yes, my instinct was to sit on my bed. When you enter that level of shock, it's hard to think clearly. My perspective at the moment was that she was not home yet because her car wasn't there. I wasn't meaning to be selfish by being sad about my collections and not thinking about my potentially hurt roommate. Edit 2. I forgot to mention that yes, I have talked to her. She said that she thought I would think of it as a silly prank and laugh about it when I saw all my things. I didn't take it that way though. I talked to her and asked why she couldn't just ask me one time to be more aware of locking the door every time, which I know shouldn't have to be addressed, but that it would have been a necessary action before stealing all my things, ripping a few of my posters, making the house a mess, which, by the way, she made me clean up, as her way of telling me to do better. I apologized for my stupidity and naiveness. I don't believe in bad people. This has actually been a problem I've always had. Anyway, she apologized too and will be giving me some compensation to help pay for the damage she gave me in the process of this prank. Everyone sucks here. Lock the door. It doesn't matter how you were raised. The second you started living with others, the game changed. The door is not the problem here. The roommate is having paranoid delusions. She needs to see a psychiatrist pronto. When you think there's a camera monitoring you in the sink, do irrational stuff like this without any warning, and your friends notice your growing paranoia, then you bet that there is a mental problem that needs to be addressed. Psychologist here, this is correct. She needs a mental health evaluation pronto. And lock your door, OP. If you have trouble remembering to do it, then get a lock system installed that will help you remember to lock it. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her roommate? Please let us know. OP said they don't believe in bad people. I'm the opposite. I don't believe in good ones. Fire me because I was in the hospital? Okay, you'll be sorry. This happened when I just graduated uni. I had my main job over the weekend, which paid the living, and a side job at a large mobile phone and broadband selling company, basically retail but with phones. The shop was located inside a larger retail store at an island in the middle, and of course a lot of people didn't know about it and didn't exactly visit our store to buy a contract or upgrade. Instead, they would go to the store on the high street, which was a lot nicer and bigger compared to our island. One important detail about the store: they were really strict about the scheduled hours being followed exactly. The working times usually are 9 till 2000 on the weekdays. Tills have to be shut at 8 p.m., otherwise it causes issues with accounting. Staff members, unless they are in the warehouse, cannot stay past 8:10 to 8:15 due to insurance reasons, and only the managers can lock the store up. Warehouse can stay later, and they have their own exit. However, it cannot be used by those who are not working in the warehouse. When you start and finish, you have to put your times in a special machine which compares them to your rotation. Same when you go out for lunch. If you finish earlier than you are scheduled, then the machine will automatically put it in as unauthorized absence. Also in our island store, you have to have at least 2 employees working during the same hours as per company policy. It was my last day at said store. My manager decided to let go of me because I didn't attend a shift due to being in the hospital and I was still on my probation. I was told that I still have to work the notice period, which was 2 weeks. My manager, we'll call him Dan, had to create rotations 2 weeks in advance as per company policy. He can change the rotations up to a last Friday of the week, meaning he can change the next week rotation on the Friday before, but not after. So Dan scheduled me on my last day on a 1700 to 2100 shift, when my usual shifts are 1600 to 2000. I've asked him if this was correct, both personally and in the team group chat, and he confirmed it. Dan was also the type of those whiny managers who doesn't actually do anything but complain about everything, and doesn't bother to train you or show you the ropes. So I kinda knew he made a mistake, but I decided not to mention it. Cue the malicious compliance. Friday rolls on. I'm hungry, so decided to have a late lunch before my shift starts. I'm putting the order through and notice Dan is trying to call me. I decline. I finish my order to feel that Dan is trying to call me again, alongside with a few texts I received from him. I decide to reply. Dan: "Hey, where are you? You're not at the store, and it's already past 4, and we have one of the higher-ups checking how things are going." Me: "Oh, I'm having lunch. I'm not scheduled until 5 p.m., remember?" "Well, no, you're lying. Your shifts are always 4 till 8. I make sure of it. Get over here. I can't stay as I have to try the food that will be served at my wedding and compose the menu." Me: "Oh, sorry, but I really can't. I've just ordered lunch and I'm waiting for it to be ready, and then I have to eat. I'd asked you if the rotation was correct and you said yes. But in case you don't believe me, I'll send you a screenshot and we'll see you at 5. I did send him a screenshot where I had questioned my times and he confirmed that they were correct. Haven't heard from him until I get back to the store. At the store, I see Dan talking to the higher up person. Dan notices me first, waves me over as soon as I sign in, and says he really needs to be somewhere else. He just needs to get to his office and get his coat. I nod and have a small talk with the higher up. Higher up: "Oh, it was so nice of Dan to cover the start of your shift as you were having a family emergency. He's such a good and caring manager." Me: "Family emergency? Not sure what you're on about, but my shift has just started as per our schedule." The higher up is confused. He asks to see the schedule, so I gladly show him the pictures Dan has posted in the group chat. Then higher up turns to me and another member of staff and asks if one of us is the team leader, and if not, then when did we start? After finding out we are not team leaders and have started less than 12 weeks ago, the higher up gets visibly angry. He stops Dan as he was on his way to leave and tells him he cannot leave the premises as it's against the company's policy to leave employees who haven't been with the company for 12 weeks unattended or to close up, so he must stay. Otherwise, the company insurance is not valid and there will be a hefty fine. Dan has no option but to stay, meaning he was missing the food tasting. He wanted to call his fiancée, however, the higher up has reminded him no phone calls during the shift and while on the store floor. So Dan couldn't even let his fiancée know, who was texting him nonstop. While higher up was there, and while Dan was forced to do his job, I had a few more conversations with him and brought up all the things Dan failed to provide us training on, alongside with a lack of support and any progression meetings. So by 8 o'clock, higher up was upset with Dan and was organizing a meeting with him and extra training for him, which I don't think was paid, as Dan had to do it outside of work hours. He was also put on a close monitor for at least a month. As everyone was leaving at 8 p.m., I was slowly getting ready. Dan has tried to hurry me up, but I was mainly ignoring him. Dan: "The store needs to be closed before 8:10. Hurry up!" Me: "Oh, but you scheduled me till 9 p.m. today. I cannot leave before that, as the system will not allow me to clock out." Dan: "Well, you must leave, as insurance does not cover us against theft or damage if there's someone else in the store after 8 p.m. We have to put the alarms on too." Me: "Sorry, but I really don't want to miss on any money. You've scheduled me until 9, so I will work until 9. Dan: "What are you going to do? You need to leave." Me: "I can clean the display models, and the island does look like it needs to be vacuumed." The higher up was having the best time in the world. He was still there enjoying the show since he saw that Dan put me on until 9. At some point, he gets tired of our back and forth and told Dan to cover me till 9 p.m. and stay in the store, and then change the hours in the system that I finished at 9 p.m. and I can go home. Dan has tried to argue, but the higher up has pointed out that it was his mistake, and if something happens in the store, he will be the one responsible, as he should have checked the rotations beforehand. Dan has no choice but to follow the orders. From what I've heard, he left around 10 p.m. that day, as the system wouldn't allow him to log in. His fiancée also left him a few years later. I do not know the reason why, but she took the house and the dog and saved money since she never married him. I've heard that Dan works as a personal growth coach, but not very successful at it either. Sure, I'll leave the uniform the way it is and wear it at customer events. I used to work as a pastry chef for a catering company in Siberia. It had a very outdated provincial charm, like almost anything in Siberia. But that doesn't mean that my boss didn't sometimes desperately try to up his game and be modern and experimental. At some point, he figured that it would be a good idea to send some chefs to the events and let them plate the food they made in front of the customers for entertainment. He also wanted to incorporate plating gimmicks like beetroot foam or some nitrogen tricks that had to be made on the spot, so he needed us chefs there, not just servers. This meant that he introduced new uniforms that are supposed to be more elegant looking for the customer events. When he got the new uniforms, he gave them out to the chefs who were meant to be going to the events and be seen by customers, and I was one of them. Don't get me wrong, I loved doing catering at weddings and so on because you can witness all the family drama without having to worry about your family or feeling embarrassed for anyone. It's like watching trash TV in real life. But the thing is, I'm very tall, 6'6", and very thin, 120 pounds, and alter my uniforms to make them fit me better. My boss came and gave me the uniform. I asked if I should try it on, and he said no time for that. Just try it on at home and wear it to the event. He said he gave me the biggest size, so it has to fit. I could already see that the chef pants had a thin material and the legs were super wide, but didn't look that long. I asked my boss if I could alter them to fit better, and he got upset and said that it's company property and I can't alter them because someone else has to wear them. I go home and lo and behold, the pants are so wide they will barely stay on my body, but end way above the ankles, and the chef jacket is also too short. I figured that I could use a safety pin to make the elastic waistband a bit more tight and then pull the pants up to my belly button, and then the chef jacket will cover everything, apart from a part of my heavily tattooed lower arms. Okay, maybe I can wrap a towel and no one will notice. And for my legs, maybe I can wear boots that are a bit high, cause since we're not actually really cooking or in the kitchen, I may not have to wear safety shoes. Next day at work, we prepare the van to the location. My boss won't join, so before we go, I tell him about my plan to make the uniform fit me. To be fair, my boss is stressed, cause as always, everything was an uncoordinated mess. He just started yelling at me that safety pins damage the fabric, and it's a safety hazard, and that I have to wear safety shoes, and that this is professional chef attire, and we should all look the same because we appear as a band, and that it's not about my fashion choices. Okay, fine, I'll comply. I go to the event, put on my new uniform in the changing room. The chef jacket sleeves end in the middle of my forearms. It does not cover my belly because the pants sit dangerously low on my hips because that's the furthest point they can slide down to. Basically, I look like a mixture between a chef and an early 2000s pop star with their low-rise jeans. I looked like I was one wrong move away from accidentally losing my pants. And for my legs, I decided that I can cover my legs by wearing Christmas stockings. Yes, very obnoxious ones with grinning Santa and ornaments and whatnot. They were sticking out from my safety shoes. Boss didn't say anything about the socks, so I guess it's fine. I go out, do the job, but kind of preoccupied with keeping my pants where they're meant to be. And guess what? Guests actually complained about how I was dressed. Next day after the event, my boss had surely heard about it. Boss called me over and got mad at me for not dressing how he told me to. I said, but I did. You wanted me to wear the uniform that does not fit at all, and you didn't want me to do anything about it. He said, I want you to figure out a way to wear the uniform without showing your belly and without damaging the uniform. Okay, say no more. What if I just wore one leg of the pants, like a skirt? I can tie the other leg around me and it would cover my belly and not damage the pants. So that's what I did to the next event. Did I have much leg room to move in? No. I walked up and down the display in tiny steps like some cartoon grandma. Of course, my boss wasn't happy with that either. He was so mad at me, but I kept saying, give me a solution then, and he just couldn't give me one. He was super annoyed and told me that it's not hard to figure this out. I said, I'm a chef, not a fashion designer, and if it's not hard to figure out, then give me a solution, because I did what I could, and if you don't want me to do what I can, then tell me what to do about it. He yelled at me that maybe I should know what's appropriate and what isn't, and I shouldn't play dumb. So I said, maybe I am actually dumb though, and I left. Just so you know, I was not scared of getting fired because I was confident in the work that I was doing, and my boss would have been insane to fire me over a uniform when we're already understaffed. So it was just satisfying that he had to put up with my stupidity regarding that. But honestly, what could I have done? If it doesn't fit, then it doesn't fit. I ended up being allowed to alter it, but only to make the waistband smaller without cutting it by sewing a loop together. As for the chef jacket, they got me a bigger one, which wasn't the same brand as the others and had a different button color, but they made me change the buttons. Am I the jerk for taking back my husband's gift after he lost me a big promotion? When I, 32 female, was a teenager, I had to go into foster care. The next few years were pretty bad, and I ended up doing some things that I'm not proud of and getting myself into some serious legal trouble. I don't want to go into detail, but I shaped up and managed to avoid completely destroying my life. A few years later, I aged out and reunited with my older brother who helped me get my record sealed. He also helped me get into college, and now I'm working in a field I'm passionate about and a job I love where I met my husband, who's 34. I've been up for a promotion and raise, and it was more or less guaranteed until now. Weekend before last, we had a work party during which my husband got to talking with our CEO, and after having a bit too much to drink, told him about my juvenile history. The next Monday, I got called in by my boss and was told that my promotion would not be happening. I asked why they would do this, and he recounted my history to me in excruciating detail, to the extent that I couldn't even plead ignorance or claim it was untrue. He was sympathetic, but the higher-ups had made it clear that under no circumstances could I be rewarded due to the breach of trust on my part. I said I had no record when I interviewed, and the financial nature of some of my past mistakes. He said it was a leadership responsibility they were not ready to trust me with, and that I could keep my job, but that was it. I was heartbroken, and I felt my husband had betrayed me. We got into a massive fight, and he has apologized profusely and asked me to forgive him because he wasn't in his right mind. Yesterday, I canceled a very large debit transfer which I had promised towards an expensive piece I was getting him as a gift for his timepiece collection. I made the offer when we knew I would be getting promoted, and now that I'm not getting my raise, I just don't want to take that much out of my savings. He hit the roof when he found out because he's now stuck with a huge bill and accused me of being petty and dishonest for continuing to punish him for a mistake he's already apologized for. I told him that he should have thought of that before opening his mouth at the party. He said that while he's sorry I lost the promotion, I have enough savings to do the honorable thing and keep my promise, and that I, of all people, should understand the importance of forgiveness and second chances. I messed up and I paid for it, and I've worked really hard to forgive myself and put my past behind me. But I don't think it's fair that over a decade later, I'm still being punished for something I've already paid for, even if he did so by accident. I don't think I'm the jerk given what he did, but he's currently not speaking to me. I could use some objectivity here. Not the jerk. Please check with an attorney about your boss rescinding your promotion. If your records were sealed, the contents, even if revealed by your spouse, shouldn't be held against you. You may have a legal case. Edit. OP was a teenager, and that could make a difference depending on where they live and the laws there. In the US, most employment is at will, and you're only protected in very specific narrow circumstances like protected class. If they found out you got pregnant as a teenager, and that would be one thing. There is specific protection against discrimination for family status, but something being removed from the public record doesn't make it a legally protected status suddenly. There is no anti-discrimination law, as far as I know, that protects people who committed crimes in the past. If there was, they'd be allowed to vote. They were not able to find this out on a background check, but now that they know, there's likely no legal protection, just like they can fire you if they find out you frequently cheat on your significant other, or you hate cats, or you watch the Cats movie 8,000 times. They don't need a reason to fire or not promote you, as long as it's not within a very narrow protected sphere. My sister gets to go to an awesome summer camp when I'm stuck going to church camp. My parents go on vacation without me, 14 female, and my sister, who's 15, every summer, and they send us to a sleepaway camp. The problem is, we go to different camps, and my sister's camp sounds awesome, and my camp is pretty mid. My sister has this immune system thing, and she goes to a 2-week camp for free for people with the same condition as hers. She's taking pictures, and the cabins are less crowded. The bathrooms are nicer. They have 3 pools. They have archery, horseback riding, canoeing, hiking, casino nights, astronomy nights. People bring telescopes and they stay up late looking at stars and planets. Game nights, and they have actual chefs that cook their food. My parents send me to a church camp because it's cheap. It's usually during one of the weeks my sister is at camp, and they know the directors and priests and volunteers. We're out in the middle of nowhere, literally surrounded by farms, with a pool and a tiny playground that's only fun when you're 7 or 8. They also don't allow technology for campers unless it's school-related. My parents could send an email saying I need my tablet for school, but they say it's good to be away from technology for the week. We do have some fun activities and competitions, but there's a lot of free time where there isn't that much to do except hang out with the other girls. You can't even flirt with any of the guys because there's an 85% chance that you're somehow related. Last summer, my parents were signing us up for camp, and I said either they find a camp like my sister's or I'm not going to go to camp. My parents found one, but it was more than triple the price of church camp, so they said either church camp or I spend the week with my grandma. I went to church camp because grandma's house is even more boring than church camp. All she wants to do is watch Family Feud, The Price is Right, or the news, cook, and talk about when she lived in Palestine. They're already talking about next summer, and I was complaining about having a bad week every summer because they want to go on vacation, and they told me to shut up because they gave me options, and if I find something for under $400, I can do that. Otherwise, I'm going to church camp or grandma's house. They're calling me ungrateful and a brat, so I wanted to know if I was the jerk. Camp professional here, not the jerk. Your sister's camp is likely free of charge, as many camps that cater to kids with conditions are. They operate almost exclusively on endowment, donations, or volunteers. Other than that, camps are expensive. I work for a camp that has all of the activities you mentioned, and on the less expensive side of things, we still clock in at almost $5,000 for a 2-week session. It sounds like your parents have given you an option to go to a camp that's more up your alley, and your choices here are really to take that option next time around or hang out with grandma for a week or go to church camp. At the end of the day, I can see why you're jealous, but it doesn't seem like your parents are able to afford something for you like your sister has access to, and in the grand scheme of things, a less exciting summer camp seems a better option than an immune system disorder. ETA. Many camps, especially those affiliated with the ACA, do offer tuition assistance. If you look a little deeper than the advertised price, you might get lucky. ETA. While I wholly understand the if the parents can afford a vacation, they can send their daughter to a better camp line of thought, it's an uneducated one. Camps that she is describing are typically far more expensive than a 1-week vacation for two.
$5,000 for a 2-week stay? That's $357 a day.
Karen loses it on a police officer over a 12-pack of water bottles. For some context, I'm a police officer, and in my country, our officers don't really have the same kit that you see in TV shows. I'm part of a specialty unit that is basically a quick response team for situations that could turn bad or just need specialty officers. We have the same kit as the stereotypical American officer, the vest, the AR, the less than lethal weapons, and that sort of jazz. It does vary from officer to officer, so it's safe to assume that I stand out quite a bit. My country also has very strict laws, so it's not common to see people walking down the street with a concealed carry or anything like that. And from here on out, I'm going to use American terminology just to make it easier for everyone to understand. Now on to the story. Myself and a few other officers were dispatched to a call involving a male having a PTSD episode and was threatening to hurt anyone that came near his house. We ended up staying there for a good few hours, trying to help the man calm down and get him the help that he needed, which thankfully we managed to do and no one was harmed. So obviously, after I went to that call, I decided to stop at the shops and get something to have as a quick meal to get some energy and calories in me. As I was going down the aisles, I noticed an elderly couple struggling to pick up some 12 packs of water bottles, so I helped them load their bottles into the trolley. Perfectly harmless, right? What could go wrong? That's when a wild Karen appears.
Excuse me.
Me, thinking she has a question about something involving policing. Yes, ma'am? Karen.
I need you to carry these to my car.
She was pointing to the packs of water. Me. I'm sorry, ma'am, but as you can clearly see, I'm a police officer. I can't be carrying things around for you because I need to be ready to drop everything in a moment's notice. I'm more than happy to help you load them into your cart and help you find an employee, but unfortunately, at the moment, that's the best I can do for you. Karen scoffs.
You aren't a police officer? You're just some wannabe airsofter.
I just want to reference here that I'm in my full kit. Me. No, I very much am a real police officer. I'm part of a specialty unit. That's why I don't wear the uniform you normally see officers wearing. If you wish, I can provide you with my ID and number. Karen.
It's illegal to pretend to be a cop. I'm calling the police and you're gonna get arrested.
She proceeds to call the non-emergency number and tells the dispatcher about me. Me. Karen, you're completely in your right to report me and verify I actually am one. But in the meantime, I'm going to continue shopping. Call for a police impersonator that's armed comes over the radio, and I tell dispatch it's me, but to still send regular patrol officers over. Karen.
You aren't going anywhere, jerk.
Proceeds to kick the back of my knee, making my leg buckle and me fall over. Me. That's it, Karen. You're under arrest for assault. Karen proceeds to kick and scream, and all the while I handcuff her, I take her out of the store, and a few store employees are following, trying to stop a crowd from forming. Just as I pulled Karen out of the store to remove her from the public, 2 patrol officers pull up. One was a supervisor. They asked me why she's in cuffs, so I explained the story, and the supervisor questioned Karen about what happened. She ended up saying that I yelled at her and attacked her, so she kicked my knee to get away from me. Supervisor obviously very quickly took my sidearm and put me into the back of his car. Standard procedure just to cover the department, and took Karen out of her cuffs, and the supervisor apologized profusely and asked if she wanted to press charges. She obviously very happily replied with a yes. So supervisor, Karen, she was very hesitant and insisted she must be going and they can just email her. Store manager and another officer all went into the security room to watch the CCTV footage. The footage showed us talking, her pulling the phone out, me walking away, and then her kicking my leg. Karen was instantly handcuffed and taken back to the station to do all of the booking and all that fun stuff. Here, most of what I know is from talking to other officers, as I was immediately placed on unpaid suspension because I was being investigated for assault. It turns out Karen had a warrant for theft, and once the officers found out, she kicked them a few times and was eventually placed in a cell. On the day of the court hearing, she was found guilty of assault, making a false police report and wasting police resources. Her theft charges were dropped as a plea deal. She got sentenced 1 year jail time and was forced to take anger management classes. Once I was cleared of any wrongdoing, I sued her for lost wages, about 6 months of suspension, and defamation of character because she ended up getting my face published on basically every bit of local news during the whole investigation and I was labeled as a power-hungry jerk. That ain't a fun reputation to have. So in the end of it, because Karen was too lazy to load a 12-pack of water into her own car, she was sent to jail for a year, lost her job, lost her boyfriend, basically only has visitation rights for her kids. Father used the assault case to get custody of them, and lost a good chunk of change. My new Karen neighbor has been using me as a free babysitter, and I never even knew. I, 23, male, live within 1 mile of 4 elementary schools, so there are tons of kids around here. I have a garden, so I'm outside a lot, and most of the neighborhood kids end up at my lawn at some point in the day. For the most part, it doesn't bother me. They're all great kids, and they have tons of questions about plants, gardening, composting, all that good stuff. I recently finished my PhD in plant systematics, so I honestly do enjoy teaching them about plants and seeing them get excited to learn about it. Also, it is a bit refreshing to have kids running around and screaming outside rather than sitting in front of screens. Recently, an issue has come up though. I was out gardening and the kids came by as usual. I finished up earlier than usual and I went inside. About an hour later, someone is literally banging on my front door. It's my neighbor, and after I open it, she instantly starts screaming about how I left her kids alone out there for an hour. And I was at first a bit confused. After some more discussion, I learned that she lets her kids outside every day and tells them to hang out with me while she goes and does whatever. Eventually, I just apologized and I closed the door. After some thinking though, I really don't think I'm in the wrong. I'm not okay with watching someone's kids. First, I didn't even know I was watching them. What if someone had gotten hurt? I wouldn't even know what to do. Second, I feel like this is neglect. She doesn't know me anywhere near well enough to have me babysit for her while she leaves. Lastly, childcare is expensive for a reason. I've been watching these kids for free? So I went and knocked on her door. Maybe I was a bit harsh, but I told her that I'm not a babysitter and I will no longer allow her kids near my house or me. I told her I was extremely uncomfortable by this situation, and if she leaves them outside without someone watching them again, I will call the authorities. I would not like to do that at all. She went off saying she can't afford childcare and I'm a jerk to not just watch her kids when she needs help. I've now gone to the rest of my neighbors and told them that I do not want any of their kids in my yard, and I explained the whole situation. Most were very understanding and they watched their own kids. Today, one boy came by and I asked him to leave and he said okay, but he was clearly holding back tears and now I'm feeling like a jerk. I'm needing some outside opinion. Am I the jerk for this? How do I even handle this situation? Not the jerk. As you say, this woman would be the first to blame you if something did happen to her kids. And since she never officially came over and said, "Hey, I've just got to run some errands. Can you watch my kids for 15 minutes?" They were never officially in your care. I'd still call the authorities and voice concerns if I were you. She clearly isn't looking after her kids that well if she just offloads them to anyone randomly. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or the neighbor? Please let us know.
Talk about an entitled parent.
Make my coworkers cry? I'll help karma turn your life upside down. Backstory. I worked at this hotel for over 2 years and was one of 2 people left that went through the training when our hotel changed hotel franchises. During this training, we were told about certain rules the company had. Cast. We've got the manager. Front desk manager. He only was here for 4 to 6 months at this point. We've got me. I'm a nice guy, unless you are a bully or entitled person. A few others I will mention as we go through. Story. One afternoon, I was scheduled to work second shift, 3 to 11. I walked in, and both AM front desk coworkers looked like they had been massively crying as their makeup was all smeared. My manager, looking quite upset. I ask, "What's wrong?" Manager, "We have a major jerk as a guest. This guy is the highest level on the rewards for the hotel chain. He's very demanding and wants free upgrades, free this and that, and he screams anytime he has an interaction with the staff. This guy has made every department call me complaining about him. Now this guy just came to the desk and screamed at these 2 coworkers until they were both crying. These 2 ladies were fresh high school graduates and were very sweet and innocent people. They loved helping people and didn't deserve this treatment." As he's explaining this, I look up this guy's room details. Once my manager finishes explaining everything this guy had done, I see this guy's info, and I had a smile from ear to ear. I reply, "Didn't you see he's an employee of a different hotel?" Manager, "Yes, but so what?" I replied, "First off, while you travel as an employee, you're required to behave and be respectful. It's in the fine print on the discount form. I grabbed his form and showed it to the manager. Failure to be respectful can lead to having your employee discount suspended or permanently revoked, and even get you terminated. You need to call this guy's hotel and ask for the GM, then explain to him who you are and what this guy is doing. I look up the hotel phone number and call the hotel and then hand my manager the phone. Manager, after his call ends with the GM, has an evil and satisfying smile on his face. His GM is steaming mad after I described all the stuff this guy's done. Main switchboard phone rings. I answered. Hello, thank you for calling our hotel. How may I direct your call? Caller. I want to speak to Entitled Jerk's room, please. I replied, absolutely, sir. Have a nice day. Transferred the call and looked at my manager and saying with a sarcastic tone, someone wanted to talk to Entitled Jerk. Gee, I wonder who that could be. Manager continues after he stopped laughing. The GM gave me his personal cell phone number and said if I have any more issues at all to call him immediately. I'm leaving the phone number next to the switchboard if you needed to call him. I told manager, your revenge is done. Now for my revenge. Manager wide-eyed. Oh crap, what are you going to do? Me smiling a very evil smile. You'll see. I pick up the phone to make a call. Hello, Hotel Rewards customer service. Yes, I would like to report someone using rewards account while using employee discount on his stay. Customer service. He can't do that. I replied. I know, I'm calling to report him. I gave her the guest reservation number and rewards member number. I continued. I bet anything if you dig through this guy's history, you'll find all his stays are probably at employee discount. Customer service. I'm starting a ticket to have this guy's account investigated. I replied. Thank you. Then hang up the phone. The manager watched as I then removed his rewards number from his stay. My manager had a huge grin on his face. That was awesome. I explained. Oh, I'm not quite finished with him yet. It's time to go spread the news to all departments he is no longer a rewards member. I made a new key for his room without concierge access. I walked around to every department. As I explained while I was stopping by, everyone had the exact same reaction as I mentioned the guy's name. Oh God, now what about this jerk? I finished explaining how he was no longer a rewards member, and if he gives anyone issues to call the front desk immediately, and his GM already probably tore him a new one just a minute ago. Everyone was so happy at this news. I finally went to the concierge room and used the guest's new key to void his current key. Then I walked into the room and explained the information to the evening concierge. She cringed at the mention of his name. After explaining she would not have to deal with him again, and she asked to leave the morning person a note about this guy not allowed in the concierge room anymore. She was very happy. While I was gone, evidently, the manager explained what we did to the 2 a.m. front desk ladies. The minute I got back to the desk, both my front desk coworkers all came up to me and gave me a huge hug and thanked me so many times. Manager to me after the other coworkers went home. Do me a huge favor, please. I replied. Sure, what's up? Manager. If I ever upset you, please come tell me so I can fix the issue. Later that night, Entitled Jerk comes to the desk, hat in hand, politely saying his key doesn't work. I replied, oh, so sorry about that. Let me make you a new key. And my best fake smile I can muster. Aftermath. Next day, I check his rewards account and it's now suspended. Check back next week. Sorry, account number not found. Am I the jerk for banning my sister-in-law's son from my house until she finds out what's wrong with him? I'm 33, female. My husband and I host all of our family gatherings. We have a 5-year-old daughter. This story also concerns my brother, who's 37, and his girlfriend, Stacy, who's also 37. Stacy has a son, George, who's 7, from a previous relationship. George has severe behavioral problems that became evident from the first time we met him. He's hyperactive, destructive, belligerent, nasty, and his mother can't manage him. Whenever his mother brings him to family events, we're all on high alert. He has to be watched constantly, especially around any of the other kids or animals. We've not had an event with him present where at least one thing hasn't ended up broken. He will break plates, throw food, throw tantrums, screaming and flopping around on the floor, and more. It's exhausting to have him around, and frankly, the kid freaks me out. We've all kept out of it because he's not our kid, but he's not even my brother's kid, so it's certainly not our place. But our whole family knows there is something not right with him. Earlier this year, the family all visited us at our vacation home, and George was his usual self. The final straw was him using language he shouldn't have been and saying horrible things when he was talking to my daughter. My husband stepped in and a crying George played the victim to his mother, and this caused an argument between my husband and me and my brother and Stacy. I told Stacy we had absolutely had enough and that her child of the corn would not be allowed back in my house until she found out what was wrong with him and had a plan to manage his behavior going forward. At the time, everyone supported our decision because they all said it was high time Stacy recognized that George's behavior was not normal. Boys will be boys' behavior. We haven't seen them since summer. About a week ago, we were all locking in plans for Christmas, which we planned to spend at a ski resort. Stacy texted me to confirm about plans, and I asked her what she had done about George. She said nothing official, but his behavior had been getting better. I told her nothing except some kind of diagnosis from a medical professional and a documented plan to mitigate his behavior would get him back in my house. Stacy has since been complaining to everyone that I'm discriminating against her kid and that his behavior has improved. She's also accused me of thinking she's a bad mother because she works and of disliking her and George because he's not my brother's kid. None of that is true. Everyone is saying I should relent and let them come on the understanding that she is responsible for any damages and will leave if he acts up. I don't want to bend on this because I don't want a drama-filled Christmas or to have to be the bad guy and kick them out around the holidays with no other plans. Am I the jerk? Edit. People were asking about the resort, so to clarify, we own a chalet in the resort and the whole family will be staying at our chalet over the Christmas holidays. Not the jerk. I personally would cancel on hosting the whole family at the resort this Christmas since everyone is pushing you to cave to Stacy. Make it a private holiday for you, your husband, and your daughter. Let your extended family make their own holiday plans and even host George in their homes. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or not? Please let us know.
Don't worry, OP. I can't stand children of the corn either.
Am I the jerk for dog-proofing my house but not child-proofing it? I will admit, this all seems weird to me. Important things to note. I have a dog that's deathly allergic to chicken, so we don't keep chicken in the house. Additionally, while my significant other and I don't have kids, a lot of my family do, and some of them are vegetarian. Our go-to meals for the kids in the family are less chicken nuggets and ketchup and more pancakes or butter noodles. Also, I have a sister-in-law who goes anaphylactic with either nuts or legumes. Moving on. I had my brother, sister-in-law, and niece over at my house. Sister-in-law invited some of her friends, which was just lovely. Her friends brought their tiny kids. All 4 tiny tots were under 2 years old. All parents were warned that I have a very sweet pup and that the house is safe for dogs, but they need to watch their kids, who are all under the age of 2. Immediate chaos.
Why don't you have gates for the stairs?
My significant other, dog, and I know how to use the stairs. We don't need gates.
That's so dangerous. Why don't you have doorknob things? My toddler can open the door.
My significant other, my dog, and I don't need those. Again, not child-proofed. The list continued, and my significant other left with the pup to avoid having to deal as my brother tried to help me with all of this. One of the moms announces that her daughter needs lunch and looks at me expectantly. I look around as I was not planning on feeding this many people, then decided, oh well, pancakes it is. Kids love them, parents can't complain about a free meal. I tell the mom this. She says pancakes are breakfast food, her kid needs protein, and that her toddler needs chicken nuggets. We don't have that, try again.
What do you mean you don't have chicken nuggets?
We don't keep chicken in the house. Dog's allergic, and my significant other sucks at not sharing food with a pup, so no chicken, try again.
But my baby will starve.
I go into the kitchen with my brother and start making pancakes. The one mother follows me, starts going through my kitchen looking for something, opens up the dog's medicine cabinet and sees the giant tub of peanut butter and screams,
Are you trying to hurt your sister-in-law?
That's for the dog.
Sister-in-law can't eat peanuts.
Yes, which is why everything has been sanitized and the peanut butter has been put away. Did the crazy mom stop? No, she tore into me about how a dog shouldn't be prioritized over a mother, that a dog is an animal and my sister-in-law is a mother who could get hurt. I guess the fact that my dog lives here and sister-in-law doesn't is a moot point. But that was when I decided that the pancakes were unnecessary and everyone needed to leave. I thought I was in the right, but my sister-in-law texted me that it's weird that I prioritize my dog and refuse to feed hungry kids. I just didn't want to listen to them complain about how I'm a crappy host and a crappy person anymore. Update. I put this in the comments, but we'll add it here. Part of the problem is that I am a nanny. Part of the problem is that I volunteer with a lot of different groups that help kids and their families. As such, I have a ton of experience not just watching kids, but also tons of stuff in my office that I give to kids and families. Except the stuff isn't mine. It's the nonprofits, and I just hold on to it until we hold the events where we give it out to the families. I spoke to my brother. Sister-in-law expected that her and her friends could come over, get free childcare for as long as they wanted, and a ton of free stuff. So that led to a call with my sister-in-law and how none of that would ever happen. Ever. I was told I need to care more about my family and less about other people. So, yay. Long story short, sister-in-law is still upset at me for making her look bad in front of her friends, and I'm upset that she thought any of that would happen, and my brother is stuck in the middle. Good times. Not the jerk. This entitlement is shocking. You don't have kids. There's no need to kid-proof your house. Also, is chicken nuggets a food essential in the US? 'Cause darn, I don't know anyone who commonly always has chicken nuggets at home.
Nuggies are love, nuggies are life.
Well, what would you do in this situation? Would you tolerate these people in your home?
Bruh, I would have gone off on all of them. You ain't gonna come into my house and treat me like that.
Am I the jerk for not taking the next elevator when a mom with 7 kids demanded it from me? A neighbor of mine has 7 kids, and they're all under the age of 9. I've seen her many times, and she always demands people take the next elevator because she has kids who need to get home. She has physically shoved into the elevators and forced people out, including my elderly father. I was on my way home from work. I take public transit, and she was on the bus with all her kids. They were screaming and running up and down the aisle, basically making such a scene that the driver asked her to have the kids sit down before they get hurt. Sure enough, one of the kids was spinning around one of the poles and bumped her head as we were going over the train tracks near my place and started screaming. She looked like she was physically okay, not even a red mark, but she screeched the rest of the ride to the building. I was first in the building and hit the elevator button. She came in with her double stroller and her gaggle of kids running around her as I stepped into the elevator and held the door for her. She told me that I would have to get out and wait for the next one. I said, "Excuse me?" She heavily sighed at me and said,
My stroller won't fit with you in here. Get out and take the next one.
I refused, saying I would make myself as tiny as I could, but I was staying in the elevator. She became irate, pointed at her kids and said,
Do you see what I'm dealing with here?
I said I understood that it's overwhelming, but I had worked a long day and I needed to get home. I said, in or out, because I'm going now. She pulled her stroller and kids out, calling me a jerk the entire time. A few people were waiting behind her and they got in with me. 2 began thanking me for standing up to her because she does this all the time, but the other one called me a jerk for not being sympathetic to her situation. I don't think people should have to make constant accommodations for people just because they have kids, especially when they're rude and demanding. But am I the jerk here? Edit. People are concerned with the way that this woman has treated my father. She didn't actually touch him. He was in the elevator and she pushed her stroller in, waved her arms, and yelled at him to get out several times. Because he's hearing impaired, he was very confused and only knew that she was yelling at him, and he got off the elevator. Had she put her hands on him, charges would have been filed. She has 7 kids and they're all under the age of 9? Not the jerk. There is no chance I need to read any further. Sir, let me finish. So I work tech support for helping some tax accountants. Basically, I do the general tech stuff, like printers not working, phones not ringing, internet or computers freezing, etc. But I don't do the tax stuff as I don't know taxes, and we have a separate department for that. Things like, the program is calculating my income tax wrong is not me. Even if the tax pro feels 100% sure they did everything right, and it's for sure the computer having an error, we still need them to swing by the support team who does tax stuff to get their stamp of approval that it is a technical issue before we assist. Now I'm ad-libbing nonsense tax jargon, so the details are wrong, but it's basically how the call sounded to me. So I get a call and I answer. Me. Hello, thank you for contact her. Yeah, hi, so listen, I've got a 1040G DX9 error on the I-99G form, but it's calculating Louisiana tax instead of Ohio, and the diagnostic errors say me. Sorry, ma'am. I think you... Her.
Sir, please let me finish. So the diagnostic error says that Louisiana cannot claim that many dependents without an F14G, but I have the F14G attached, but it thinks it's an F15G, even though the claims DX4 has it under the second page of the 14% fiduciary claim and
Me. Ma'am, sorry to interrupt you, but her.
Sir, please, I'm in a hurry here. Please don't interrupt.
She then proceeded to talk about more tax jargon for what felt like 5 straight minutes. Then, when she was finally done, I just waited silently. Neither of us say anything. Her.
Okay, I'm done. What do I need to do?
Me. You need to call the correct department because there's a problem with the tax software, and I'm your general tech guy for printers and computer stuff. Her.
What? So I have to repeat all that again? Why didn't you stop me?
Me. I tried twice. You yelled at me not to interrupt. Twice. So I didn't. She just huffed loudly and hung up. Best call ever. Am I the jerk for canceling the entire trip after finding out that my husband hid my daughter's passport? My husband and I have been together for 3 years. He has 3 kids from his previous relationship, and I have 1. She's the oldest. She's 17. He's a dedicated man, puts God first, and loves everyone. My husband always complains that my daughter doesn't spend time with her step-siblings or him, but she has reasons for that, and that is school, health issues, and work. She does her best to spend as much time with them as she can, but she, on the other hand, complains that her stepdad tells her to basically take on the role of a babysitter whenever she's with her step-siblings. My husband denied that and said that my daughter was making up excuses to not have to spend time with his kids. For this issue, I figured that a family trip is what the family needs to get together and spend more time around each other. My husband liked the idea, but said that his kids are now uncomfortable around my daughter because of her attitude, and suggested that we let her stay home and have the house all to herself since that's what she's always wanted. I told him it's best that we all go. He kept complaining until I snapped and I told him to stop. I booked for and paid for the whole family. However, my daughter told me she couldn't find her passport. We turned the house upside down looking for it but couldn't find it. My husband said maybe it was a sign from God that we should let her stay home so the trip wouldn't turn into a disaster. I ignored the comment, but later while I was cleaning his office, I found the passport, tucked away in the 3rd drawer under a ton of papers. I was floored by this. I confronted him with it, and he swore he had no idea why or how the passport got there. I checked the upstairs camera and saw him enter into a room. That was it for me. I screamed my head off at him, then canceled the whole trip completely. He started arguing, saying that I overreacted and that he didn't want his kids to be miserable on the trip, and he's willing to apologize to my daughter if and when I reconsider my decision regarding the cancellation of the trip, because my stepkids will be devastated, but I said it was final and that it was done. He became cold and distant and said that he wants to take some time to do some fasting and get guidance from God about how he should deal with the disrespect and control I had displayed lately. Am I the jerk for canceling it altogether? Where'd you find this guy? We don't work here, but what the heck? I'll take your order. In my youth, my family was rather poor, lower middle class. My dad, who could not read or write, worked graveyard shift at a creamery. My mother, a housewife, was very active in PTA and other community activities. My dad's job paid the bills and put staple foods on the table, but left no room for comfort expenses. As soon as I was old enough, I got a paper route. The monthly funds went towards padding our family budget. One simple joy we took a pleasure in was once a month, we would splurge on a quiet salad and pizza dinner at the local Pizza Hut. This story takes place 1987 to 1988. I was about 14 at the time. We arrived one Sunday afternoon at the local pizza parlor. We went in, we sat down at our regular table, and we waited for the waitress to come take our order. We talked, we waited, we cracked jokes and waited some more. We started to realize something was not quite right after 10 to 15 minutes. We had heard the phone ring a few times, but other than that, there was none of the usual sounds of bustling workers in the kitchen area. Curious, I slid out of the bench and approached the cashier's counter. Looking around in the back area, I could not see a living soul. "Hello," I called out. Nothing. "Anybody back there?" Again, no response. Now I was feeling that distinct, edgy feeling one gets while watching a horror movie. I returned to my parents and informed them what I had discovered. Or should I say, lack of discovery. "Check the restrooms," my dad suggested. My mom agreed. She checked the women's room while Dad checked the men's room. No one. Now we were all very concerned, and more than a little frightened. We had heard on TV and in newspaper stories how sometimes a robbery goes bad and it was only discovered later on. Call the police? Mom suggested, pointing at the phone on the wall, which chose that very moment to ring out loud, making all of us jump in fright. The freezer? I said over the ringing phone. What? Mom asked. The freezer. In horror movies, that's where the bodies are always at, right? I'll look, I said. The heck you will, my mom responded with authority. Your father will check it out. My beloved father, the man I admired most in the world, pointed at me and said, he runs faster. In the end, I did indeed go behind the counter by the simple fact my parents were too busy arguing over who would go check in the back to notice me walking off. First, I armed myself with an impressively large and surprisingly sharp round pizza cutter sitting on a counter. Next, I checked the entirety of the back area. The back door was locked from the inside. Then I checked the manager's office cubicle. Finally, I approached the freezer. I knew what I was going to find. I've seen this scene in plenty of movies. By this point, both my parents noticed my absence and had joined me, staring at the freezer door with morbid anticipation. I grabbed the handle, pulled, and threw the door open, and sure enough, there staring back at us was boxes of pizza-making supplies. But no bodies? What? I was, truth to tell, very disappointed. Nobody, nothing, no workers. We were the only ones in the pizza parlor. Hello, came a call from the front. I'm pretty sure if a little more effort had been put into the jump scare, we would have hit our heads on the ceiling. Quickly, we approached the front. I recall my heart racing a mile, thinking an employee had arrived, only to find a middle-aged gentleman waiting along with his wife by the wait to be seated sign. Oh, there you are, he said. We would like a table for two. I'm sorry, sir, my mother replied. We don't work here. Okay, but we want a table for two. There is nobody here. We checked, Mom explained. Yes, I can see the place is empty. So can we have a table in the back? The man pressed. We don't work here. As far as we can tell, there is nobody here that's supposed to be here. Mom further elaborated. So where can we sit? Oh, just find a place to park your butts. The place is empty, my dad butted in. My father, bluntly, honest, and always absurdly practical. Honey, just call the police. Let them know what we found. With that, my dad scuttled off to the salad bar. Let it be known, my father was never one to let an opportunity for a meal go to waste. It took over an hour for a police officer to arrive. The reason it took so long, as the officer would explain later, was that dispatch had downgraded our call to non-emergency status. During the wait, however, we had to deal with a few things. Waiter, we would like our menus, please. My dad, being the helpful sort with a decidedly odd sense of humor, gave the couple menus. 1 sweet tea and 1 unsweet with lemon, please. I was already hitting the fountain drink machine. I was there, it was there, and Mom had found the coffee supplies, so what the heck, I brought them their drinks. We would like 2 dinner salads and a large pepperoni pizza. Dad pointed to the plates by the salad bar and told them, might be a few minutes on the pizza. Gotta wait for an employee to show up first, but go ahead and eat as much salad as you want. Then one of the nearby churches let out. Hello, there are 4 of us. Hi, we've got 2 more coming. I tried calling several times. Can I please get 2 large pizzas to go? By the time the police officer arrived, my mom and I were effectively running the parlor along with a guy who came in from the church with his family. He said he once worked at the other Pizza Hut in town while in college. Mom took orders. I delivered drinks and food. I got tips. And the young man made the pizzas. My dad? He was busy eating and chatting with the customers. As for people paying for their food, neither my father or I could calculate our way past 10 fingers and 10 toes. Mom, on the other hand, was one of those super annoying people of her generation that could calculate a whole string of numbers in her head faster than you could type on a digital calculating machine. Really, really annoying. So she figured up the amount, including tax, and had them pay with a check. The checks were slid under the cash register. The register itself we did not even try and touch. When the officer arrived, we were quite happy to recognize him as one of the officers my dad was friends with. Back then, police officers on the night shift could come by the creamery my dad worked at and get free ice cream from the employees' break room. Dad would often take time to shoot the breeze with them for a few minutes. Officer Shield, as I will call him, immediately recognized my dad and asked him what was going on. My dad explained the situation and I butted in, sounding a little disappointed, I'm sure. that we didn't find anyone in the freezer. Officer Shield first went to the register, opened it, and confirmed that there was still cash in the till box, then walked around the inside and outside of the building. No signs whatsoever of any kind of a disturbance. He called in and waited for orders from higher up. In the meantime, never let it be said a police officer is willing to pass up an opportunity for free food. 20 to 30 minutes later, I can't recall, but eventually he got a call back telling him to lock up the place. They were trying to contact the owner of that franchise. But problem, he couldn't find the keys to the parlor, and the main doors had to be locked from either the outside with a key or the doors locked from the inside with the latch, then exit out the back door, which required a key to lock the bolt from outside. Officer Shield called that fact back in. A few minutes later, the lead officer on shift arrived to evaluate the situation. What did he find? A pizza parlor half full of customers happily chowing down on pizza. When he asked, understandably confused, why Officer Shield called in his report saying there was no employees on the premises when clearly customers were being served, at which point I oh so happily piped in, while handing off a pizza to go to a waiting customer. "Oh, we don't work here, we're just being helpful." So eventually the police managed to contact the owner after a couple of hours. The owner contacted the manager and the manager came storming in. Lots of anger and confusion. The manager, in a fluster, tried to accuse my parents and I of theft of company property, but Officer Shield would have none of that and pointed out the checks, the order slips, and the list of anything we used. Then he pointed out the fact that we could have left the place empty and thieves could have ransacked the parlor. She backed down and focused on contacting the workers that were supposed to be on duty. Turns out the assistant manager had found out that very morning her boyfriend was having an affair. She had then gone on a tirade, taking out her anger on her male employees. They chose not to take it and walked out. The assistant manager then just decided to up and quit, leaving the shop wide open. As for my parents and I, we were informed by Officer Shield very firmly that should we, for whatever reason, find ourselves in such a situation again, it would be far more helpful if we refrained from being helpful. And yes, we did pay for our food and drinks, but we still got banned for life from that parlor.
Support our channel by joining as a member today, and we'll give you a shout out in our next video.
Or come watch this video next. You won't believe what Karen does in that one.